please use hashtag CryptoCom. If you visit the Crowdcreate Twitter, we are retweeting, a lot of our attendees' tweets. Thank you for kind of recapping some of the amazing highlights. And with this NFT play to earn gaming session, it's going to be nothing short of spectacular. And please support all of our speakers and panelists as well for sharing their insights. And the best way you can support them is by following them on social media. And yeah, thanks everyone.
All right, welcome. You might recognize some of these famous characters from our previous conferences.
Michael in human form is a treat. We thought we were going to get his metaverse version.
Repeat offenders. I'm happy to go into the metaverse if you'd like. I thought, for this one, given our history, maybe I'll present as normal.
Just Michael Wagner. Well, we have some really esteemed people joining us, so everyone jumping in. This is our Play to Earn Revolution panel. We have speakers. All of our speakers are here. We have Andrew Campbell from Axie. Welcome.
Hello, excited to be here. I've only been with the company for 6 months, so excited to share my perspective with everybody, but thanks for having me.
Awesome. And we have Sean Dudley from product at Animoca Brands.
Hey.
Hey.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome. We have Michael Wagner, repeat offender here from Star Atlas.
Always great to see you guys. Thanks for the invite and looking forward to the discussion.
Awesome. And we also have Sarutobi Sasuke. See if we can bring him on. From Yield Guild Games. So if you can have the Crowdcreate team bring him on, he's in the chat. He's chatting here. So let's promote him to be a panelist. Oh, Michael's back into the metaverse.
You inspired me.
All right, Sarutobi, you're here. Welcome.
Hello.
So we have quite a collection of characters here representing the play to earn.
I can't compete with Michael though. That's crazy.
Well, fortunately, Sarutobi, we are on the same team, so
we are, yeah.
Necessary.
I didn't bring my space blaster with me.
So Sarutobi, thank you for joining. He's from head of partnerships at Yield Guild Games. So you've heard a lot about Yield Guild Games from our previous conferences, but welcome everyone. So Jeff and I will be moderating this panel. So love to hear from, what's going on in the play to earn revolution right now. There's a lot going on and you guys are hitting headlines left and right. What's exciting? What are you seeing going on right now that's kind of top of mind? We can start with Michael.
Well, I would say less so than what's going on right now, than what is possible going into the future with play to earn gaming, or really as we're kind of coining it or terming it, it's play to own gaming, which is really what it represents, right? It's not only the ability to earn and monetize time and interact with unique social and human experiences within, say, the metaverse or within these game environments, but the simple fact that you actually have true possession and ownership over those items that you are utilizing within the game environments. And so looking towards the future, which is not your question, I get, but looking towards the future, what I think is very powerful here is just how empowering the play to earn economy will be in the long term. And in particular, one of the subjects that I've been discussing quite a bit is just the extent to which these digital economies will disrupt things like the general labor market by eliminating friction of geographic borders. Axie, Andrew, Axie, I mean, what you guys have accomplished over the years of development is just inspiring and really mind-bending, because you were able to empower an entire population of people in the Philippines through the pandemic to really not only survive and persist, but excel. Right? Because the potential of earnings in that region far exceeded the potential of working a job in the local economy. So to me, that's what's like most exciting, and thinking longer term and big picture versus, what are the current state of things. But let me pause there. And, I know we have a kind of a short timeline here. So let me pause there.
Yeah, I was going to say on the Axie side, growth has been what's so exciting for us. Almost too much so. You know, we hit actual exponential growth when our scholarship concept really took off, and that was created by a longstanding and large community member, and that was somebody that was able to spread this concept of what translates to uncollateralized loans that are semi-trustless, right? Axies, you have no risk of them getting ruined or getting lost. They're secured by a blockchain wallet, but you can share game access with somebody on the other side of the world that you don't really necessarily know that much about, but they can grind. And as long as they trust you as a manager to pay out those rewards as agreed, it's a pretty equitable exchange and both sides really benefit. And that value proposition ends up decentralizing the evangelism of the whole operation. Because when somebody becomes a scholar, if they're making like 60 or 70% of everything that's generated, generally you can accumulate some wealth through that. You can buy your own team, and then you can start onboarding your family members or your friends to be your scholars, right? You graduate from scholar to manager, and that growth vehicle it's sort of an overused platitude, but it's more akin to like the fishing rod instead of the fish sort of a thing. And it gives people this tool that they can easily build upon, and then they have this incentive to bring on their friends, and you get more rewards the better you are at the game. So everybody sort of has an incentive to coach anyone that they bring on under their scholarship. So yeah, that growth has been really exciting. And I agree, the future looks very promising. When you're talking about scaling into millions of daily active users, things get pretty cool.
Andrew, it's phenomenal. Like, I just want to call out here is that Axie has probably one of the strongest communities, and you can see it. There's a community called Salamat Axie, and you can literally see people thanking Axie team for what they've done. That's a very hard and real revolution right there, right?
Yeah, our take rate is pretty low. And I think that's a big part of why this whole operation feels so different, because there's a lot of money being moved around in the economy, and that exists in traditional games as well. But in the centralized world, it's much more easy for developers to have a much higher take rate and take a lion's share of that money that moves. So when all that goes back into the economy, it really creates a lot of loyalty and time, right? That's one thing that can't be easily replicated in this space. Axie's been running for 3.5, almost 4 years now of like live economy time, and a lot of that in bear markets. So having that backbone and that strong community has helped us scale and be a little insulated to that growth, just totally taking over and sabotaging the little village or town that we've built.
Yeah, and also I want to hear from Sarutobi, because you're directly involved in this community Axie's building, and
Oh yeah,
you're actually empowering them in many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm proud to say that I was one of the earlier proponents of the scholarship model as far back as November of last year, and then obviously very heavily with YGG as well. And I suppose what's really exciting for me to kind of witness now is how games are, looking to Axie to kind of replicate the similar mechanics like scholarships or, the rental models of various kinds to enable this kind of lowering of barrier to entry, and for the ability to have, assets that can be owned by maybe multiple owners, but then leveraged by players that might not necessarily own those assets, and be able to kind of find work through that kind of mechanism.
And now that land and mystics are becoming so much more expensive, we're actually starting to see like DAOs forming to buy, let's say, 3 or 4 plots of land that are connected and form a little bit of an estate. No one person in the group could afford the whole thing, but 4 or 5 people will come together, and maybe they'll have a token. Maybe it's a little bit less of a formal arrangement, but we're starting to see that more and more in these little like smaller guilds, and I guess YGG is just more of a scaled version of that. I mean, you guys have a lot of land holding as well that in theory we'll be able to utilize across your giant scholarship base.
Oh, absolutely. And I suppose that's a really exciting thing to look forward to. I think I speak for a large amount of the community that we're very excited for the land game to kind of blow up the Axie world even bigger than it already is. But I think for me, what's also incredible to see is just the inspirational effect of Axie on the kind of whole ecosystem has just been something to behold. And I think that right now you've got smart contract developers, games developers like tripping over themselves to kind of build build a play to earn game right now. The kind of amount of money and time and effort being put in the space right now is just mind-boggling. We're talking to a large number of games at the moment, rapidly trying to build out economies and games at speed.
Sarutobi, I just want to comment though on the replication of the model that was introduced through scholarships, which maybe the terminology is novel or unique, but the concept itself truly is not. I mean, really what we're talking about is the free flow of capital, right? And I like to describe, say, the Star Atlas metaverse or any of the play to earn economies as consisting of at least 3 separate cohorts. The first is the players, so the people that purchase and own the assets and intend to play. There's also this cohort of tertiary or ancillary services that will emerge around the economy itself. People that are looking at providing consulting services, for example, on how to structure your own portfolio for use within the game, or how to, say in our case, how to configure your ship for optimal efficiency and productivity within the game. And then there's the really what's right in the middle, which is kind of the portfolio constructors themselves. So these are investment arms that are looking to acquire assets similar to what Yield Guild is doing, right? Acquiring assets with the intent to deploy them in the game, but not actually play themselves. And to me, that's going to create an enormous amount of opportunities for people all over the world. And this is very similar to people who are purchasing, say, real estate with the intent to rent it out, right? It's the exact same model. It's just being deployed digitally. So I think it's a beautiful concept to emerge out of crypto, out of blockchain, out of decentralization. But circling back, I think that's one of the most promising aspects of play to earn is we are going to see, and we are already seeing, massive inflows of capital because there's the potential to generate yield at the same time that you can deploy labor and allow people to be productive in an environment.
Yeah, and to round it off, I do want to say this is a uniquely collaborative panel, because everybody here on this panel particularly knows and works with each other. I do want to bring up Sean. So Sean from Animoca Brands. I mean, you're the investor, and then Michael was just talking about the inflow of capital. How are you seeing it from a bird's eye view? And you're looking at more than just the companies here, but as Animoca Brands, you're looking at multiple and different little different areas.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, it's good to see, because obviously, like, there's a huge, like, and we still see the effects of this right now. And as kind of, let's say, the NFT market's kind of going back up again after the explosion, what it was at the beginning of the year, there were so many people who were all kind of rushing to say, okay, NFTs or something. Right. And they were coming in huge amounts of kind of money was being brought into this from people who otherwise had zero idea of it. Right. And never touched or even imagined the concept to exist. And now this has kind of birthed a second round of that within a different kind of lane where it's like, OK, what is this now as like, what is this as a kind of more lower level concept of being able to earn through an interaction? Right. And it's the thing is, like, within blockchain, I think what we're doing or what we're seeing are people who came in early and really thought, really understood and really wanted to build something. They're seeing constant validation by interest of kind of like this huge amount of investment that's kind of coming in. I mean, like, we've had, let's say, depending on how far back we want to go, but let's say like the real NFT kind of growth and those kind of games, let's say like 3.5, 4 years or so, what that was then to what that is now, they're almost incomparable, right? And what it's done is like those people who kind of grinded away on like incredibly like tools that barely work and blockchains that are kind of really tough to just kind of push a transaction and stuff like that, they're now seeing that all that effort is being hugely validated by not only the communities of players coming in, because like the thing is like what Axie's done in regards to 1 million players, that's a game, right? That is not kind of, oh, a blockchain game. That is a kind of top tier free to play mobile mass market experience that brings in players of that type of volume, right? So it's not a case of, oh, we're operating in any niche anymore. That is no longer there. And what that means is that it opens up to all of the same people who would be and who have looked at how can they come into games on any level? How do they come into games from a standard free-to-play concept? How do they invest in games that are kind of projecting a traditional non-blockchain based metaverse, like a Fortnite and stuff like that? But it's basically, we've shown and are continuing to show across the entire industry growth and stickiness of blockchain user numbers. And obviously the revenues are there, or at least kind of the core numbers are there. But now it's kind of saying, oh yeah, this is actually a legitimate thing. And it's doing numbers that are real numbers in regards to people, user growth, activity, and stuff like that. So like that is only ever going to continue to grow. And it's interesting considering that in addition to all of that, the blockchains themselves are becoming far more user-friendly as well, right? So we, for instance, we're doing stuff on Flow and Polygon, and we've been able to essentially give NFTs away or fund like enough currency to cover transactions, like hundreds of transactions. And it's not like burdensome to the point that it becomes impossible, right? Because it ends up being, okay, we will fund a small amount of Polygon for your Rev Racing account, and it's a negligible cost. It is. And minting those tokens is a negligible cost. If we wanted to do that on Ethereum a year or two ago, or even this year, it's impossible, right? You end up paying millions of dollars to do the same thing.
The ecosystem is definitely growing up at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And that lines up like directly. And it happened with NBA Top Shot as well. It's kind of removed the cost and removed the kind of setting up a kind of a Web3 wallet in some ways for Top Shot, then you will gain users because you're essentially just focusing on the experience itself.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then if you can focus on the experience, and that experience means, oh, there's a paradigm here in regards to that experience that's completely new with a play to earn concept. You're saying, okay, so we're getting just the same amount of users, but also there's a whole new business model that exists there as well, right?
Scaling is still the hardest part. And I think that's where Ronin comes into play for Axie. Like that is our side chain. It's sort of a MetaMask Ethereum combo on our side chain. And yeah, it's a little more centralized, but it's much more cost effective to use. We're still giving all of the Axie users 100 free transactions per day while we get ready to launch staking and our decentralized exchange that'll be on the side chain. And obviously we have a bridge to Ethereum, so you can move stuff back and forth. It's just a little bit expensive when gas fees are 50 or 100 or even higher than that. But I think one of the key things to tack on of what Sean was saying is that Axie and these other play to earn games are showing a really good use case for NFTs, right? There's still a lot of social doubt in general around NFTs, and a lot of that comes from art and IP that isn't in the actual hands of the holder that gets minted onto the blockchain, and all the different knockoffs and sort of scam type NFTs that still exist out there. And even just speculative art is hard for a lot of people to wrap their brains around. It doesn't really seem like it doesn't resonate with the average user. But in the case of Axie, where you think of them as game assets and NFTs that can be used in these different environments, and remembering that Axie is just at the tip of its iceberg in terms of expanding its environment. That's what the land gameplay is all about. That's what the next version of Battles is all about. And eventually our SDK that'll open up our community to develop their own games in different ways to integrate Axies into gameplay and use cases. That's how we scale the whole thing. Right now, we're at like maybe 8% of the universe that we want to deploy. This is just the alpha of the whole thing. So that future is very exciting to kind of go back full circle to where we started.
No, thanks, Andrew. I do want to highlight, the stories behind all of you all here, because yes, we're creating a revolution and lives are being impacted, but it's a lot of work. And I know, Sean, you talked about how the platforms are making it easier, but Michael, we had that chat, and from a founder's point of view, it's still very difficult and challenging, and you're definitely still pushing through to build these communities, because it is a new world, and this entire model is kind of being pioneered as we're speaking.
So, like, just one quick note on that. I think like one of the things is that building on blockchain is hard. Building games is incredibly hard, right? So it's kind of like you're compounding this scenario. So it's always going to be extremely difficult. But yeah, just wanted to make that point, because like yes, blockchain is early and building up and tools are fostering and stuff like that, but we're almost taking the most difficult type of software to build on top of that, because it's all kind of, there's no productive outside of, now that we've introduced the fact that you can play to earn, there's no reason why you would play the game other than you're compelled to yourself, right? It's not a productivity tool that you're forced to because your company is saying that this is what we're going to use, or a social media platform because in some ways, like, it's going to let you log into another account with ease or something like that. These are purely kind of, we're kind of combating like people's free time, right? And saying, how do we kind of tell somebody we're worth your free time? And that's what games try and do all the time. And they are super difficult to build, and the competition is extremely kind of like, there are so many fantastic games. Bad games are few and far between compared to, like, if you go back far enough, right?
Let's talk about that. That competitive landscape is really compelling right now because more and more games are jumping in.
But if I can just, though, Sean, I completely agree with your sentiment on the compounding complexity of introducing, say, blockchain or crypto or decentralized economies into the traditional game development process. However, I would argue that it's actually more difficult to build anything on blockchain than it is to build, say, a game, only because there's established standards and standard operating procedures and methods, right, that people are kind of familiar with and experienced with. Building on blockchain is like building on quicksand. Like, everything is changing on you constantly, from the innovation and evolution of the technology through the regulatory landscape and environment, for example, which is constantly in flux. So I don't know. I just wanted to make that comment. I think personally that having a blockchain integration into any type of game is more complicated than the inverse, where I think this is actually very competitive. It creates a competitive advantage for those of us who have subject matter expertise in crypto that are also developing games, because trying to figure out how to evolve your entire business model and your revenue streams, and as I said, integrate decentralized economies into games, that is extremely sophisticated and extremely tough. So even if you have a AAA development shop, trying to convert that shop and understand crypto and build around all of that is it's quite complex. And I think we have some time ahead of us before we see any major competition, which kind of leads into your next question, Ivan. So hopefully I didn't barge in there too much, but
no, that's all right. I want to hear from the other speakers also, like the competition side, and like, because there's a lot of games getting into this play to earn revolution. What are you seeing?
I mean, I'm seeing like an interesting mix. Lots of games are trying to play the kind of copycat game and copying some of the existing projects in the space. But slowly but surely, I am seeing like a lot of developers kind of trying to target genres of games that haven't been approached yet. I mean, obviously we've seen a large number of TCGs in the space, so that's like trading card style games, of which you can sort of kind of include Axie in, but not really. It's kind of like a hybrid, not completely card game. But then obviously there are a lot of other kind of trading card games in the crypto space. Space MMOs is obviously led at the moment by Star Atlas, but with like quite a number of others also trying to kind of build out the idea of like a space MMO. Lots of other games you can see. I think that's one thing that's going to be really exciting, is just how can kind of play to earn NFTs and token economies get applied to different genres of games. Is going to be something that's really going to be exciting to see. Because maybe some genres of games don't really kind of fit that model as well, or maybe every kind of game can have it integrated into their current system. So that's going to be something really interesting to see.
Yeah, this one's a little harder for me to answer. Like I spend a lot of time focused completely in my lane, and sort of as he just pointed out, there's, I don't know, the Axie universe is sort of, it's not a completely unique concept, right? There's like Neopets out there, and there's all sorts of other digital pet type games. And the idea of creating a whole new universe with a brand new IP and art style is a pretty lofty task. And when they contacted me 3 or 4 years ago, I kind of said, yeah, good luck with that. You know, they gave me some free Axies and I never even logged in and used them. I was not a believer, but, you know, then 3 or 4 years later, I saw what staying true to the cause can create. And like I said before, that time element is really hard to replicate. And that's a big part of building out this kind of universe and having a game and a concept for these creatures that, you know, Axie wasn't always its current battle form. It used to be this auto battler. And there was a time even before the auto battler where it was just breeding and kind of collecting with the idea to do more and expand the universe. And we've had third-party user games created like a Flappy Birds, like Flappy Axie type game. So I don't know. I don't know who's really trying to do that aside from us. I mean, I see a lot of the scams and the knockoffs, but those are, you know, just sort of lowbrow attempts to ride the coattails of the excitement that we have going on. Yeah, I've got tunnel vision a little bit in that regard. It's a lot of work building a universe.
Indeed. So it's an inevitability that more people, there's already been multiple successful proof of concepts that have, and the influx of investment has basically said, okay, this is here now, right? So that just means that there are much larger developers as well as quite masses of smaller developers who are saying, okay, let's do something where we use blockchain. And it's a matter of time. And the tools themselves are becoming more standardized to the point that you can get started. It's not kind of a majorly difficult thing at this point to deploy a 721 contract or 1155 contract on Polygon and start minting. That's kind of fairly minimal effort to do right now. And all the documentation's there. Everybody's done it multiple times and I'll say, this is how you do it. And they can do it at very minimal cost. It's kind of, this is your idea, right? Mm-hmm. And you can see that with like the explosion of the procedural kind of artwork concepts, right? There are loads of those that are releasing every single time because the creation of NFTs has been simplified. There are multiple platforms like Mintable and stuff who also kind of make that even easier. So the creation of content is far more accessible. The thing that's really going to become kind of how successfully some of the first traditional game companies kind of execute on this is how willing are they to remove the wall, right? So one of the things that we've always wanted to do, and we continue to do, and it's one of the reasons why we build across different blockchains, is that we truly believe in the idea of decentralization. But if you get, let's say, a large company who has traditionally, let's say EA and building FIFA at Ultimate Team, they've been able to control the entirety of that revenue and those assets, right? So are they going to be willing to basically knock down their walls and allow those assets to be transferred elsewhere, right? So it's like, yes, they will come, but what is the, like, what form are they coming in? Are they going to all say, okay, this is our title and we're deploying a blockchain with it as well? So yes, you have NFTs, but they're not necessarily transferable outside of what we've provided, right? So there's two kind of, like, I guess, like phases that are going to roll out, right? So the first will be, there will be like a rush of more traditional, very well funded, very well put together and incredibly talented teams who have been making traditional games start releasing games that use blockchain. And then there will be another phase of that where they kind of say, okay, do we use our kind of ability to build and use a decentralized blockchain? So there might be a place prior to the launches of the big titles where things can happen within the decentralized space that still continue to give the people who are building right now more kind of time ahead to exploit kind of new things, right? Because it's a big thing to be worth billions of dollars and invest that much money over time as a huge game company, traditional game company, and then basically take your hands off and say, okay, you guys go for it, right? And that's something that they've never done, never been built to do. Probably legally not even set up to do in any capacity. They probably have a huge legal overhead to say, what does this mean to allow our content to be transferable in a manner that we've never had to do?
We're going to get to the legal topic in a later panel.
So yeah, it's like they're coming, but it's kind of the forms of which they come in is going to kind of be different, I think, and they will probably have to learn the same as everybody else kind of learned, that decentralization is something that people like.
John, maybe I can add just one alternative to that line of reasoning, and that's it'll be a shameless plug on Star Atlas, but our vision to decentralize over time through our governance structure with Polis, which is enabling custom content creation within the metaverse in the future, wherein we might not even be the central design and development studio behind Star Atlas. What that means is that they won't be responsible for all of the blockchain or crypto mechanics or economy, because it's already been created, right? And this is not going to be exclusive to Star Atlas. This will exist probably across all blockchain gaming. But in the future, those core developers that have expertise in building games and building content will be able to contribute that exclusively as a resource and get compensated for their effort in the metaverse in the future.
Yeah, I mean, like for Animoca, all of the tokens that we've distributed, they're decentralized tokens. At some point in the future, there will be a point where we hold only 49% of the total supply, right, of every single one of these tokens. And then it is definitely no longer ours to manage or control at that point. And we do not control how it's used, right? And that's actually one of the greatest strengths. But again, it's kind of being comfortable with losing that control. But what that means, like, what do you free up? What do you gain from that? What other benefits can be employed through that?
These are good thoughts to have. And I know we need to wrap up this panel. I do want to have some closing thoughts for everyone. Jeff, did you have something you want to ask?
Just in closing, so this conference is CryptoCom, and it's all about bringing together the crypto community. Axie Infinity, Star Atlas, Guild Games, Animoca brands. I mean, you've done a fantastic job having these loyal supporters. Maybe just in closing, any insights for the community on how we can get involved, support you, or just in general, just be more engaged with your projects.
For my side, I think one of the most general things is just trying to spread the general word and utility and general like positive concepts behind NFTs and blockchain and why it's worth it. Like for Axie, we have like 1.7 million daily active users. Half of them are brand new to blockchain, and a quarter of them are bankless. They're brand new to finance, and they live in an economy where they don't have access to loans or savings accounts or investment vehicles or the general financial instruments that we have access to, in the developed world. And that's powerful stuff, like getting people plugged in and giving them a reason to learn about blockchain and onboarding them into the ecosystem, giving them access to these like wealth accumulation tools. It's really exciting. It's a big part of our community, and we need help educating those people and reaching more people to understand that, this whole thing is really worth it. And there's something like 2 billion people that can really benefit from play to earn games and just general connectivity to blockchain and DeFi. So let's work on finding those people, And
I think that kind of leads quite well into us, because I suppose with YGG and Yield Guild Games, if you want to support the play to earn space and pretty much everybody on this panel, you can join YGG and help participate in the large numbers of games. Obviously, we have a big presence in Axie Infinity, soon to be a big presence in Star Atlas, and multiple involvements with many Animoca titles, and very many more to come, I'm sure, as well. So obviously joining YGG, jumping in the Discord and seeing what's happening, and what the games that we're getting involved with is obviously a really solid way to kind of see what's going on in the play to earn space as a whole, and help push it all forward, I suppose, as well.
I could easily talk about things like our ongoing galactic asset offering here, which is kind of the rollout of NFT ship sales and land sales. But to be honest, I think Andrew's point is definitely worth noting. There are play to earn gaming, blockchain gaming will lead to one of the largest mass migrations of individuals into the crypto space, right? It's attractive, it's entertaining. It doesn't feel like you're learning finance. It feels like you're having a good time and you're earning while you play. So in our case, we discourage kind of FOMOing into purchasing items or fear of missing out of purchasing items. Please educate yourself. Please join like our Discord, for example, rapidly growing community. All of the members are very friendly, very helpful. They will teach you what you don't know, and they will help inform you on how to make the best decisions for yourself going forward. So that would be my kind of word of advice is try to inform yourself before you just rush into something. This is still very, very early. We've got a long road ahead of us, and this is a big revolution. So we welcome everybody to be a part of it, and look forward to seeing you all in the metaverse.
Michael, I just wanted to say thank you because you really live and breathe that education. We were speaking to one of your team members, said that you probably like went a week not sleeping, and one of the nights you went to bed at 8 o'clock in the morning. Just we see you on these podcasts, we see you constantly educating out there. And for everybody on this panel, truly, you are leading the play to earn revolution. And as a lot of lives change, for the better, and giving people a chance to be able to earn. So it's inspiring. We definitely need to have you all back for our next one because you're fan favorites. We actually had to chase you down over the last 3 weeks trying to get together this panel with all of these games on here. So,
well, whenever you guys make the Crowdcreate token, it'll just make it that much easier.
Yeah,
but Ivan, Jeff, sincerely appreciate you guys for the invite. You always put great conferences on and have great panels. So sincerely appreciate being a part of it.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. You're getting some comments and questions in the chat, so make sure you answer them in the Q&A. But thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sean, for your time. Sarutobi, Andrew, Michael, always great to have you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Right. Okay, so let's move on to the next point. If our team can move them off the stage. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
And again, we'll be putting Twitter links to all of our speakers and panels. The best thing you could do is really to follow them, stay engaged with their projects. Number one, follow them on Twitter, join their Discords, play their games. As Michael mentioned, they do a galactic asset offering, Axie Infinity, and even Yield Guild Games. They have fantastic documentaries about play to earn gaming, and Animoca Brands is the fantastic investor that's actually backing a lot of these projects. So as was mentioned on session 1, get out there, do the work. Best thing you can do is just follow these people.
A great place to start is a lot of these games and a lot of these platforms, they'll have a Discord, a Telegram, and a lot of them will be publishing, free content out there. So it's easy to find it. You just have to look, but definitely dig in and learn.
It's really interesting that Andrew mentioned that he was actually given Axies before. And a lot of times these airdrops happen with projects that are early, where you could earn some of these valuable in-game assets and make a living out of it. And so that kind of leads into our next presentation here. Again, this is CryptoCom and for the crypto community. And really, we want to teach you and educate you on how you can get involved in these projects and also participate in the value creation of these massive economies that are going to live, in the metaverse and whatnot. So we're happy to share our insights and same thing, educate all of you.
All right. So how to get involved. So we've been hosting this conference all day. This is session 2. But how do you get more involved? So if you want to learn more about, if it's crypto at large, these projects, like we were mentioning earlier, a lot of these projects that are presenting are also great, opportunities to get into the early stages, to get involved in those communities. Like, Jeff was saying, Axie Infinity, these are projects that have done very well and built massive communities. So by putting them on the front of the stage, both for educating you, but also opening that opportunity to just get involved with them. And so we're hosting more of these events just like this, AKA CryptoCom, but we're also having one coming up in November 30th of this year. This is going to be DevCom. So this one was focused on the community. This upcoming one in November will be focused on developers. So a lot of these platforms and protocols that we're presenting today, if you've heard it, Solana and Casper are both focusing heavily on the developer ecosystem now, because those are the people that build the railroads for blockchain. You can also follow us on Twitter at crowdcreate_us. You can follow us. We've been tweeting all about this event as we're going. And you can also sign up for our community launch newsletter. So we're launching the community token. You can go to joincmty.com. You can sign up there and we'll send you all the latest information on our value generation event. And finally, just get engaged. We've been hearing this call to action from Mark Yusko. We've been hearing from everyone, you know, Michael just now, but just get engaged, dive in. For a lot of people on this conference, could be first time getting exposed to crypto. You know, do your homework, get engaged, go into these communities and dive in.
And again, this conference has been crowdsourced. The panels, the chosen speakers, which was Star Atlas, Axie Infinity, Animoca Brands, and also Yield Guild Games were selected by the crowd and the audience, which goes into this crowdsourced wisdom that we're working on. If you want to go to the next slide. So as you mentioned, Michael Wagner has participated in 5 different events for Crowdcreate. And he was part of a gaming mastermind we had earlier in the year. And he's truly an advocate for educating people on play to earn. He was at our NFT conference in March. And all of these conferences, we always crowdsource feedback, insights on what you would like to see, who would you like to hear from, some of the past suggestions. Please put them here in the Zoom chat and even tag us on Twitter because we truly take all of these insights to mind when we can create really good content that's interesting for all of you. We actually took feedback from session 1 and we kind of prepared these slides because people were messaging us, how can we get more involved in the community? What can we do now to get more involved as well? And so this leads us to something that we're actually working on. They're called the Crowdcreate lists, and we're going to be disrupting the Forbes list. So the Forbes list is this curated list of some of the top innovators across multiple industries. There's a Forbes 30 under 30, 40 under 40, or the Forbes most influential people in blockchain and crypto. What we see is that these lists are actually curated by a certain editor-in-chief. The way that we're doing it differently is actually we're crowdsourcing these lists from all of you and also some top experts. Here's an example here. Koopa Troopa, he's somebody we really follow and respect when it comes to the development of DAOs, social tokens, and also communities. He shared this tweet with a list of who to follow in NFTs. What we do is we crowdsource these, and a lot of the suggestions here from the audience, using Michael Wagner, using Axie Infinity, and also using Yield Guild Games, founders as some of the top thought leaders that you should follow as well. And so you can help us by actually contributing and nominating people that you think deserve to be on this list. That, in the case of VC investment funds, that can provide more than just capital, but actually provide network and strategic advice for some of these projects. And so here's a list of community building influencers to follow. Again, we mentioned Koopa Troopa, he's great. Jess, who runs Seed DAO. We curated some of the best tweets that hopefully would be useful for you. As Jess mentioned, joining a DAO that matches your interests. Some of these DAOs are everything from music to Web3 culture, finance, art, of course, NFTs, and even our own DAO, which we're starting, which is going to be called The Community. And so the idea is to curate and be a part of these communities. Something interesting that Koopa Troopa mentioned on that previous slide was that DAOs are internet communities with a shared cap table and bank account. And so that's something interesting to note because you can actually accrue the value of these communities. And as mentioned from Mark Yusko in session 1, it's something like the value of Facebook, Twitter, Google, They do billions of dollars in profit and revenue, but how much money have you been paid out for contributing your content and being a part of the community? Zero. And so when it comes to Web3, you will now have that opportunity to be a part of that value creation. Oh, yeah. And so in terms of community, VCs also need community too. If you follow, we love to follow some of the top VCs and thought leaders. Andreessen Horowitz, you can see here a tweet by Ariana Simpson where she's actually asking for the best game economy designers. So you can see this organic need for community. All of you could be very valuable in suggesting game economy designers for her. So you can see her crowdsourcing this as well. Another example is Bluegrass Capital here, asking for who the best investors on video games are. And if you follow a lot of these projects, you can see at various times they'll need various resources, from developers to community managers to event organizers, social media, and everything in between.
So overall, the community is extremely powerful, and I wanted to highlight and thank our community here for retweeting, tweeting, getting engaged on our Twitter, sharing our our panelists, sharing some of the thoughts and lessons that they're sharing on the stage. I really want to thank everybody for being a part of it. And here's a snapshot of some of these tweets going out there and some of these retweets. So thank you so much for being part of that community. Now, I know Jordan just mentioned it. Where can I get some CMTY? So just to let you know, I know we announced this on session 1, but anybody who is attending this conference, we're going to get a snapshot from Zoom for anybody who actually joined the event, listened through it. They'll be getting and they'll be airdropped these community tokens. So stay tuned. You can find out more at joincmty.com, and you can sign up there. But yeah, make sure, if you know someone that hasn't joined yet, you can definitely let them know. We still have some time in session 2.
And in terms of curation itself, I had that previous slide, but wanted to highlight some DAOs and how specifically they're using these communities. One of them is called Flamingo DAO. And so if you visit them, a lot of the curators that you find on there have also been part of our speaker series and expert network. So you'll see the CEO of Sandbox Games, Sebastian. We also had on Mintbase, Carolyn, and Nate, who were part of the Flamingo DAO community. And what Flamingo DAO does, it's a DAO. They invest and own various NFTs, CryptoPunks, quite a bit. And the whole idea is that you could be a part of this governing DAO and contribute in terms of identifying trends, emerging artists, other opportunities in the NFT space, because it is a full-time job trying to find the NFTs out there, different crypto, DeFi, blockchain, play to earn gaming communities. And when you can leverage the power of the crowdsourced research, insights, we do believe that you would be able to do better in terms of educating yourself and know the projects that are good ones to piggyback off of.
It's truly fascinating how we're going through this conference, and the concept of DAOs and communities are so intertwined. And you can see on one of the earlier slides that Jeff was sharing, but the concept of these DAOs, it's really far reaching. And you have like Flamingo DAO, curation DAOs, you have media DAOs. It really spans, and it's almost redefining what these business organization structures are. All right, so I'm excited for our upcoming panel or presentation. We have a lot of people have been already mentioning this project in our chat. We have Brent. Welcome, Brent. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. It's good to chat with you yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
we're excited to hear from you, kind of
Yes.
carrying on our topics that we've been, talking about. So you'll be presenting kind of the future of NFTs and that real world crossover capacity. And you have a very interesting project that you're working on. So you have 10 minutes. I will let you know at the 1 minute mark, but you have it. You can go ahead and share your screen now.
All right. Am I sharing my screen now? Or
Not
can you
yet.
hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see your screen.
Yes.
Not yet. Not the screen yet. So Brent is the CEO of NFT Draft. You can find out more about him, nftdraft.io. You have a lot of fans here, Brent.
Yeah. If I can get this display setting to set up. It's not setting up. Sorry, guys.
Send over a link. Do you have a Google Sheet that I can pull up and I can present it?
Yeah. Here, let me shoot it over. Really weird.
Put it in the Zoom chat and I can help you out here.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Joseph says, one goat to change the world.
Where are we here?
Yeah, so we have upcoming, the next conference will be on November 30th. That's going to be DevCom, so everyone stay tuned for that. Brent, send me the link in Zoom chat and I'll pull it up and I'll share my screen.
Yep. Is it there?
Not yet.
Son of a gun. Technology challenge, guys. Oh, for the love of Pete.
You have fans here though. They're cheering you on.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. Saying, how did he fall flat on his face and can't deliver this?
And I want to thank all the attendees and all the speakers for joining. I know this is a full day event. For some people, it was late in the evening, early in the morning, and definitely pulled through. So thank you.
Brent, if you would like to do a platform walkthrough, that could work as well. Unless you had a
Yeah, it's just
presentation.
not transfer. There we go.
Walk us through. I know Jeff is sharing a screen. He's showing your website. So walk us through what's going on there.
Oh, sure. Sure, absolutely. So we're obviously we're a fantasy sports integration where we look at NFT Draft. We've looked at fantasy sports from a new way in which we're integrating old school card collecting, as we see here, that Jeff sees here, right, with interesting sports cards in which we connect these cards to real world fantasy sports activity. These cards have integrated value. So what we've done is in order to play, we must purchase these NFTs, these cards that you see here, or some of the cards. In order to play in the fantasy sports tournaments, obviously, you need to create a team from these cards. Further, each card has a value to, let's say, a rarity, which a user can increase the potential to win within the tournament. The tournament we have multiple layers of tournament play. We have a higher stakes, if you will, tournament 1, tournament 2, tournament 3, so on and so forth, in which players can enter. The value of the card dictate on a point scale of 135 points, the value of a card here in this 17 points for Pittsburgh's quarterback, which although maybe Ben Roethlisberger, may be his backup as well, depending on if Roethlisberger's hurt again. So we're not depending, and we steer clear of the NFL licensing issues because of that we're staying agnostic on the fantasy sports side, are staying very mundane on with the cards and their creation. They represent the position and not the player. So our NFTs, as we grow, this is our beta season. We consider, as we integrate and develop this beta, the cards are certainly appreciating value on the secondary market, on the primary market as well. We have many opportunities to grow this business and this brand. This draft, or this iteration of the game, is our first game. We're looking at multitude of other iterations in games, such as bowling, golf, and some other off the cuff, different highly participatory games. Our card packs, as you can see here, are promo packs. We can buy just like old school card collecting, where I would toss out the gum and keep 100 cards in hopes of getting something good. It's the same odds of getting a rare card, captain card, a GOAT, MVP, or a standout, which is our form of rarity. Each card pack, as you can see here, has there's some odds to it, but it's totally random as we go down. If you can scroll down some more. I think I went through this. So as the games go on, the numbers on the left, as I said, it's the points total for your total for the week, and as the teams you enter. As a paid tournament, if you're pay into the tournament play as a sponsor, quote unquote, you can enter multitudes of times that MVP, that GOAT, that standout 50 times. For the standout and the GOAT is 40 times enter the tournament and 30 times for MVP. So it's a free to enter model. You don't necessarily have to pay to play. But on those entries, it's one entry per card in this case. So with the cards themselves, obviously we like to see everybody win. The appreciation of the card is first and foremost. As a collector, as we've seen in discussions today, NFTs have entered the consciousness of society. NFTs are certainly a wave to develop business in the future, which is where I was headed with today's presentation, that we see that the development of business is creation of the value for not only our gamification, what we're doing here, but we can transcend this into real world business, such as could be research and development, could be manufacturing, taking the concept of the entity as a whole or the concept as a whole, and gamifying with utilization of the NFT to bring in and modify or enhance customer experience and drive customer behavior so that it increases value for both the business owner and the business, but also the holders of the NFT, whether that be the collector, the investor, the novice user. We can drive that behavior. So
And
that was
how do we
a
follow
large
you?
part of my conversation. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
How do we follow you? This truly a novel concept. These pack of cards that I haven't seen in a while. How do we follow you? How does the community follow you and your project?
So NFTdraft.io is our website. I'm on LinkedIn, obviously. You can connect with me there and can drive engagement from there.
We were just talking about cards as NFTs, and so timely that you're up here.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about the presentation snafu. But we certainly see it as a much broader vision for the world today. It's truly a future. It's truly, whether it's hype or not, getting to an earlier conversation with Sandbox and some others this morning, that it's truly not hype. I've been around a long time. I started off when created, as I think I've told you guys, foreign currency exchange companies in my past history. And this is much like that, but it's become a business model, and it's been a successful business model for 20 years. This is just the nascent stage of NFTs, where it feels like the Wild West because there's not been bumpers put on it yet.
Well, you're gonna like the next panel, Brent, because we're gonna be talking about crypto regulations, because those are where the bumpers come in. But thank you so much, Brent.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, let's welcome the next group. Next panel. This is going to be Brent. You do have a lot of fans here. Make sure you respond. There's a lot of questions going on here about NFT draft, but this next panel, we're going to be talking about crypto regulations. What do you need to know and what's coming? We're joined by Loretta Joseph, director at AP Capital. We have Cal Evans, co-founder at Solidus Labs. Cal, familiar face. And we have Chen, ARAG cryptocurrency lawyer and strategy expert. Welcome, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Hi,
I
Loretta.
just got off another panel with the Australian government about regulation, so I'm on a roll.
Nice. So
great to be back here, guys.
Oh, hey, Cal. So this conference, we call it CryptoCom because the community and a lot of the panels, the topics, and the speakers are crowdsourced. And so organically, when it comes to crypto law and regulation, what better to hear it from than the legal experts themselves. And so, yeah, really take it away just in terms of what should we all know as, participants in the markets, crypto, NFTs. Cal, we've known each other since the crazy ICO days of 2017, I think, when we met. And so a lot has happened.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of explain to everybody, long time listener, first time caller for this conference. It's great to be here with you guys, and I guess I'll kind of jump in on that. I know such a great panel. Thank you for having us on here, and great to be speaking with Loretta and Chen. You guys took a look at some of your work earlier today, outstanding as it is. I guess, look, it's really the question on everybody's mind, isn't it? Look, what's happening in the regulatory framework? Where is the world going? I myself, as a UK and kind of quasi-American lawyer, as an international guy, have plenty to say on the topic, but I know we've only got a very short time. So I know I'd be keen to kind of find out what, Loretta, you've just finished a kind of panel with the Australian government. So maybe you could kick us off by giving us a little bit of information around that and what you kind of took away from that call.
Yeah, so my name is Loretta Joseph. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm actually a banker, and I'm going to put that out there because I've written legislation around the world in digital assets, and I think if I was a lawyer, I probably wouldn't have done that. So I do come from a totally different background. So I think and bankers can write law apparently. So I've written a lot of legislation around digital assets globally. I've written and regulatory frameworks in Bermuda, in Mauritius, in Australia, in Serbia, across Europe. I work in Nigeria for the Financial Intelligence Unit. So I do a lot of law enforcement implementation globally around virtual assets and virtual asset service providers, and writing regulatory frameworks that fit into that. So I just got off a call. When I left Australia to go and write legislation back in 2017, Australia was at the forefront. You know, we at the time I was the chair of the Australian Digital Chamber of Commerce. We were the country that came up with the broad basket of digital assets as a new asset class. Other jurisdictions were still talking about crypto assets, virtual assets here. In the last few years, Australia's really dropped the ball though, which is very sad because I'm Australian. So, we were telling them that some of the small jurisdictions that I've worked in, that, Bermuda's got 60,000 people, Mauritius has got 1.2 million. And a lot of the African jurisdictions I'm looking at are actually superseding the big jurisdictions by enabling the ecosystem with clarity around, and legal clarity around legislation and digital assets. So I told them that they better hurry up and get back and be jiggy with it. So I've looked at mainly writing legislation in common law countries, i.e. that's Commonwealth countries. I find the US is very difficult because you've got too many regulators. You've got state regulators and federal regulators. Europe, it's like a big jar of spaghetti upside down. So I like to look at places like Canada, Australia, UK that have all got the same legal framework, and that we can look to harmonise and standardise a lot of the regulations globally, which is not giving clarity to the ecosystem.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I myself, I worked with some various governments, the FCA, the Bank of England, the Treasury in the UK, did some work with the European Union, and have done some work with some various states out here. And like yourself, I've drafted some kind of thought pieces and some legislation on crypto itself. And I guess you touched on a very important point, which was the uniformity piece, because we operate in such a very focused industry, in so much as you have those that are focused on decentralization and freedom and doing lots of wonderful things. And you have those that are focused on, well, look, maybe we need to get more in this channel of atypical finance. And it's almost like, regardless of whether you're a banker, and I'm sure nobody will hold that against you, Loretta, or whether you're a lawyer, it's almost like never the two shall meet. So Chen, what's your kind of thoughts and feelings on what you're seeing at the moment in the kind of regulatory landscape of it all?
Thank you, Carl, and pleasure being here. And first of all, just point out that once again, I find myself in a panel where I'm the only one without a Commonwealth accent. So I will try to keep up with the level of sophistication with my Israeli Middle Eastern accent. But just for context, so we have a legal expert, we have a banker, and I represent the technology side of complying with regulations. Solidus Labs, a company which I'm one of the founders of. It was founded about 4 years ago, mostly by Goldman Sachs, former Goldman Sachs engineers, basically because crypto introduces a world, crypto, DeFi, blockchain introduces a world of opportunity to transform finance and many other things, make financial services more accessible, more transparent, more efficient. But it's rooted in groundbreaking technology that's new, that also introduces a new world of risks. And really, what Solidus Labs does is we provide crypto-native risk monitoring solutions that help mitigate those risks and really enable the merits while making, governments, institutions, and also just the public feel more comfortable. So we work with both regulators and the industry from both of these sides. And I, of course, agree with both of your points that uniformity of standards is a big challenge. Clarity is a big challenge. I'll generally say that, just as kind of like an opening comment, that, when we started our company and kind of 2017, you mentioned the big ICO boom. Around then we would walk into a big conference, even ones that were full of relatively institutional oriented crypto folks, like let's say digital securities, and we would say crypto market surveillance, which is really the ability to detect market manipulation in markets, and people would raise their eyebrows. They didn't really know what the hell does that word, how the hell does that word belong? And I do realize that surveillance has a negative connotation, but, long story short, between now and then, 2018, we could still hear CEOs of major crypto platforms like Jesse Powell of Kraken saying that crypto traders don't care or want protections from manipulation. That's not something you would hear anymore today. It's definitely true for the centralized crypto world. From my experience working increasingly with NFT markets and other decentralized platforms, it's also not the case anymore.
Jen, maybe if you can kind of hint on that with NFTs, what are some of the pending guidelines and regulations that you see that the SEC and big governments globally have in place that are kind of being discussed right now?
So I agree that at the moment, there's a lot of unclarity. I do think it's important to mention that unclarity is a necessary part of technological innovation. There will always be unclarity when there are new technologies out there like NFTs. But it's also an opportunity to do the right thing, is what we always remind our clients. And not just because, the first reason is, of course, to protect the many people who are very excited about NFTs and other new products. So the other reason is, of course, not to get in trouble with the law. And one of the main reasons, of course, that this awareness of the need for risk monitoring, for compliance has increased is because we've seen more and more enforcement actions. And of course, just not too long ago, last week, I believe the SEC said, for example, that they're looking into Uniswap. Commissioner Berkowitz of the CFTC, and I'll finish with that. I'm sorry for rambling a little bit, but Commissioner Berkowitz of the CFTC did a fireside chat with my CEO not that long ago, and he said that every department at the CFTC is currently looking at decentralized decentralized finance, the DeFi projects, and trying to understand where are the risks and what can be done about it without stymieing the industry. That's the big challenge regulators are facing. Sorry, so I'm not sure if I answered the questions, but I talked enough to stop now, and I'm happy to revisit it later.
Maybe Cal or Loretta, if you want to pick up in terms of anything that you're hearing right now in terms of these pending guidelines from the SEC and big governments that are going to be rolled out. I was just
on a panel about that with the ex-head of the FATF, and I'll tell everybody now, regulation isn't going away. When the FATF guidelines come around, who's the standard setter around money laundering, terrorism financing, they brought out the travel rule recommendation 16 of the FATF. Everybody got up in arms, but now the ex-head of the FATF and myself work with, I think, 15 of the biggest exchanges in the world who have got the technological solution to solve the problems. And the travel rule means that you need to know the beneficial owner, the beneficial seller or buyer of a crypto transaction, and the person that you're selling it, just like the SWIFT network does. So the FATF is the biggest, they're the AML CTF regulator. All of us other regulators that sit under that, either the securities regulators like the SEC and the prudential regulations like the Fed, we come under that level. Obviously, those two levels look at consumer and investor protection more so than money laundering and terrorism financing, but they all fit into each other. Now, it's funny because I was a trader. I was not so much a banker, but I've traded derivatives for 37 years. I've traded every asset class. And the funny thing I find when people are talking about DeFi and non-fungible tokens is that regulations don't change. Securities and prudential regulators, we go off what we call principle-based regulations. The FATF run off risk-based. Now, we were just talking about that on the panel because I had the ex-head of the IOSCO, who's Australian, who ran the Australian regulator, the equivalent of the SEC, and the ex-head of the FATF, who's also Australian. We know that regulations are not going anywhere, but what you will see in things like DeFi and non-fungible tokens, everybody in the industry thinks that all of us that are old regulators, we don't understand what we do. But fintech goes back to the 1990s when I was a futures trader. When we moved from floor trading up into computer trading systems, we didn't have the answers. So things like high frequency trading got developed. Regulators learned to regulate it. Same you're seeing in DeFi. Okay, we don't have intermediaries to regulate, but what you will see come out, and this also goes with the FATF, code as regulation or regulation as code. There will be a regulatory node built into these systems, which allows an oversight from an entity, a regulatory entity, to allow regulation to continue. And we've been doing that for years. So that's not going to change, and that's going to become more prolific in the next 6 to 12 months. And you will see regulators understand how to regulate platforms if they can't be regulating the intermediaries because there aren't any.
Wow, Loretta, so specifically, those platforms will all have KYC now. We noticed Binance integrated last month. So you're saying that these regulations, so KYC on all these platforms, what is not going to be allowed going forward in terms of these regulations that you see?
So what I would say, I mean, I'm a consultant at Binance, so, you know, I've worked with them very closely on things like KYC, because what the FATF has said is not going away. Now, the FATF is a standard setter, but it has countries that are part of it. It doesn't make rules up itself. So of the 238 countries, the travel rule has only been implemented by 40, but that will have to go up. Because if you don't comply as a jurisdiction to the FATF, you get blacklisted, and that's not good for economies. So we will see, we've had some issues around the travel rule. Obviously, there's been a bit pushback from the industry, but what we're starting to see is the industry is saying, you know, the ones that comply and regulate and do proper KYC will survive. If you're out of that bucket and you're not doing those things, you're not going to survive. And I think that's where you're sort of seeing the molding of the industry starting to understand that regulations are not put there to stifle innovation. I think they are sometimes, but when you look at the FATF standards, none of us want people to blow each other up. None of us want people to launder money. None of us want kids to be trafficked. And when you break it down, you know, obviously often entrepreneurs and business builders don't understand, you know, the very facets of, you know, people that launder money using technology, but none of us want that. So if we can comply to ensure that those things are not done, everybody wins. Yeah, consumer and investor protection that comes out of securities regulators and prudential regulators, often I think with the industry is a bit unfair. But that comes down to there's a lack of understanding with many regulators about what this industry is and what it does. There's very few people like me that have been in it, you know, for over 10 years that understand coding. But that's my responsibility to help the regulators that don't understand that, what they're looking at. But I think we're seeing a much better collaboration of regulators and the industry, much better than we did, say, you know, 3 or 4 years ago, that are now working to ensure that that regulations do the industry the best possible job, but they also protect, you know, the people that they're trying to protect.
Yeah, thanks, Loretta. Maybe Cal, I know that you're in and out of the US, and us as US citizens, we've been not able to participate in things like the DYDX airdrop. You know, it was valued at $100,000. We weren't able to participate in Flow Token on CoinList that, you know, Dapper Labs ran. And so, you know, maybe if you can share, I don't know, is there any pending regulations on that?
Yeah. I mean, look, you guys have both raised really interesting points there. Chen, you speaking about Kraken, and I was speaking with Jesse and some of the team in Wyoming last week, and they've gone one end of the scale. They're going for a banking license, a specific type of banking license here in the United States, and they're trying to become more compliant and more kind of industry aligned by taking that particular step. Now, the biggest problem we have here in the US, and I think we have in a lot of places, is not necessarily a lack of regulation. It's a indecision. It's a lack of action that's being taken by regulators, either one way or another. And if we park the morality conversation aside of money laundering, terrorism, financing, we all know that's bad. What we enter is in the realm of what becomes acceptable and not on a global competitive scale. So if we take the United States, I always flag up the example of insider trading. Insider trading is hugely illegal here in the United States, but we cross over the ocean and we end up in Russia. There's no such laws against it, or certainly very few laws against it that are implemented. So when we look at what's trickling down here in the US, we, as much as we love to look at, you know, everything we have here that maintains what we do, we really are in a very interesting position. And I hear clients all the time talk about the gray. I don't want to be over here. I don't want to be over there. I want to be in the gray. I want to know what I can kind of get away with that's okay, but is kind of looking like I'm doing all right. And in that description, they're not offending. They don't mean to break any rules. What they're actually saying is, look, we have to compete on a global scale. This isn't like a Swift network. It's not like an IBAN. It's not like anything like that. It's like, we are literally, if we don't do this here, I can pick up, move over here and just do it, because the laws are easier to use here. And in an age where perhaps 10 years ago, we just started to counter money laundering, you know, terrorism, all of those kind of nasty things, we've now got back to this world of, your computer's going to get hijacked. And if you don't send me 5 Bitcoin in 24 hours, your computer's gone. And best of luck finding me, because I'm going to be over here in the ether somewhere. And we have real problems with that. So the kind of regulatory things that we see, I always try and describe to people, look, we are actually here in the US going back in time. It used to be, we put a big focus on, let's get heavy reg tech. Let's do all those cool things we can use, deploy the technology, make sure that everybody's compliant and filter that funnel. It's a great way to do things. But now this new decentralized tech has come out and people don't know where to put it. So one of the greatest things I've even spoken about with regulators internationally is, walk me through the difference between an NFT and a Pokemon playing card. I mean, how do I differentiate? And the speculation image is the same. One is physical, one is digital. Where do I draw the line? And so things get very convoluted. And unfortunately, here in the US, what we have is a hands-off approach. We don't really know what to do. So maybe we're kind of going to sue you. Maybe we're going to punish you. We're going to leave Bitcoin alone, but we're going to sue Ripple. But we're not really going to sue Ripple. We're kind of going to stall it for 2 years and see if we can all agree on something. The patchwork of it is terrible. And so from my professional opinion, which I'll talk about very quickly because I know we're short on time, is we are parachuting. We're literally parachuting companies out of the US to jurisdictions that have a better framework. Wow. But unfortunately, that parachute isn't taking them to the maximum framework, because now we're seeing this framework's too restrictive. The FCA in the UK is a great example of that, treating everybody's application almost like it's a full FCA application. But they don't want to go to jurisdictions where there's no legislation, because as Loretta's pointed out, they're all blacklisted and nobody wants that on their business card. So they really want to be in this center zone. And one of the things I was speaking about last week is, you know what? Most companies are actually okay with paying tax. They're okay with identifying most of their founders, and they really don't want to finance the bad guys. They just want an easy mechanism to do business in. And unfortunately, here in the US, we're not getting that, because it's not because of over-regulation or even under-regulation, because nobody's making up their damn mind, or as we say in England, their bloody mind. So, you know, over here for us in the US, I think we're going to see actually a bigger, I call it the tsunami. I actually refer to it as the tsunami. You know how when a tsunami occurs, the water pulls away from the beach before the big wave comes? I think that's where we are right now in the US. Things are going to pull away before a massive wave comes in.
If it's okay to jump in, I mean, I think it's a really great point, but I want to put in a counterpoint for a second. Not really a counterpoint, but another way of looking at it. I agree with you that regarding the patchwork, or I agree with you that there's kind of like a sometimes frustrating feeling of indecision, etc. I do think here in the US, I do think that part of it is because American regulators can afford it for a few reasons. First of all, and again, this is my interpretation, of course, but at the end of the day, once things are figured out, just like you're saying, everyone will flock here. And you know, if we look at American capital markets, regardless of crypto, right? There are various reasons they're the best in the world. And one of the reasons, you know, is obviously regulation. If you look at crypto markets, there must be a reason that if you look at any benchmarking report of credible volume, and again, I'm speaking of centralized crypto exchanges as one of the segments that is, you know, is diminishing over time in its proportion compared to DeFi, et cetera. You know, the top most credible exchanges are here. And the reason is because they're, you know, no one wants to mess with the American regulators. It pushes some people out, you know, and America is losing money because of it. But the result is that the foundation for, you know, institutional, large scale, you know, crypto trading platforms that have, you know, that are integrity driven, you know, is pretty strong. And my take is that currently American regulators are kind of picking very poignant, let's call it, enforcement actions, which are enough to make you know, other platforms you know, be very concerned, and also a warning with more and more investigations. So I think it's kind of like you know, there are two ways to look at it. I mean, I agree with you on a lot of things, but at the same time, it's also kind of important to remember that there is a reason why the most integrity-driven crypto markets at the moment are here. at least when it comes to centralized crypto. And I'll just and just a slightly separate point, but I also just to your point earlier, Loretta, about and just how difficult it is for regulators to keep up with this industry. What's really interesting from our vantage point is that at least I'll speak for myself, I feel that regulators are really get it. They understand that they're not keeping up. And what's really cool about it is that crypto is not just an opportunity, is not just driving a transformation in the very stagnant financial system. It's also pushing regulators to transform the way they regulate. You mentioned that you were in Wyoming last week. I had to sit down with the Banking Commissioner of Wyoming when he was here for the Digital Asset Summit the week before. They were touted as a regulatory unicorn, right? Because of their innovative approach. And you're suddenly seeing states that you wouldn't have thought about in this context doing really cool things. As another example, the DFS.
Chen, actually, I do want to jump in here because Loretta and Cal brought up a good point. If people are leaving, US and they're going to someone who has, who is going to be the leader here? Who's doing it right? Who's figuring it out?
Can I answer that? So I'm going to put that on its head. I mean, the US, you've got thousands of regulators, state regulation so different to federal. It's impossible to get some sort of coalition or agreement on regulation. But you think about the people that use digital assets, guys. I mean, you sit in the US, so you often get very US focused. I mean, I work across Africa, India, and South America. In Nigeria, I work for the Financial Intelligence Unit. We've got 70 million users of Bitcoin in a country of 270 million people. So the US, it's the life of capital markets. But when you look at the emerging world, that blockchain and digital assets are going to absolutely transform. 6 billion people live in a Commonwealth country. So I think, what I'm saying is that there are jurisdictions that are doing this very, very, very good. The US is sitting on the fence because they don't want to step in. And I think that as a combination of a number of things, is that they've got too much to do. They don't really understand the technology. But the countries I work in, and we're writing legislative frameworks, have got the biggest populations on earth. These in the next 10 years are going to leapfrog the US and Europe. I tell you right now, and that's where you're going to see sensible regulation be staked. And I think what happens in the US and Europe going forward is really not going to matter to the rest of us.
And so for a lot of these, listeners, they want to know who are those? Who are those countries that are doing they're doing it right?
So I think there's countries like Bermuda, Mauritius, Australia, that a lot of the island states are doing because they're innovative. They're not backed by legacy systems. They can change laws very, very quickly. I think you're very right. You don't want to go to a country that's got no regulation because you can't pass your business back into a mature market. That's not a particularly good way to go. But what I'm seeing across the Commonwealth is 53 countries that are part of the biggest institutional consortium on the planet, where you've got 6 billion people. You are seeing driving forces of the Commonwealth countries starting to adopt very similar regulatory frameworks. Australia, Canada, the UK, we're all part of that. We're very mature markets, we're very regulated. I think what you're seeing now is different buckets of the world moving forward. And some of the regulatory frameworks, in the countries that I work with, do not allow nefarious activities. Beneficial owners are known, companies are known, but the ecosystem is given the ability to have legal clarity and certainty that the rules are not going to change on them, or that there are no rules which may be different in 6 months. And if the SEC decides that Ethereum is going to be a security, or they're going to go after NFTs, it's still very confusing. But if you go to countries, and I'm seeing a lot of the African countries now starting to step up, and a lot of the other Commonwealth countries with having proper definitions and harmony and standardization around what these regulatory frameworks should look like.
I think, Loretta, to your point,
Cal, just in closing, also, I know we're closing out this panel, but maybe you can round it out and just share some words of wisdom, insights on what we should be paying attention to, and also how to follow you on Ania.
Absolutely. Look, I think the most important thing is here, nobody's going to agree on what jurisdiction will be the best, because whatever your project is doing, you really have to take the strength of the regulatory framework you're looking for. NFTs, DeFis, centralized, cross-border transactions, whatever your project does, you need to go and find the right regulatory framework to make sure that it works for your project. Forget sandboxing. We're light years beyond sandboxing. go and find an awesome regulator. Most of them will talk to you about it. Most of them will work you through it. Nobody wants to be a criminal. Nobody wants to do nefarious things. So regulators will talk to you. So my kind of closing sentiment would be, for the first time ever, you actually can go and jurisdictionally shop. You can literally shop for what you need, go find it. And there's some great places right now you can do business internationally.
That's great. Chen, do you have any closing thoughts?
I mean, I agree. I completely agree. You know, if you're operating a crypto service, if you have a crypto project, whatever it is, figure out regulation. It's already been made very clear that it's not a better ask for forgiveness than permission. And as Carl and both Loretta said, there are a lot of different ways to approach it. And if there's still some leeway today, there's not going to be any, you know, within the next year or two.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Chen, Cal, Loretta, thank you very much for your insights. And yeah,
Pleasure.
we'll put links to your Twitter and LinkedIn so people can follow you. All right. Our next panel is going to be the future of NFTs in the metaverse, very deep conversation on self-sovereign identity and also trends and motivators to watch for in consumer demand. I'd like to thank Miko Matsumura, Dirk, for being returning panelists to some of our events. Miko, thank you for actually introducing us to a number of the speakers that were a part of today's event. It's been a hit. And then Netcath, Yatsu with Animoca Brands, thank you.
Thank you, glad to be here.
Okay, terrific.
Hello. Hello.
Miko, if you'd like to moderate this panel, you're a seasoned expert here and veteran at some of our events. So take it away.
Okay, I appreciate it. I think I'll just start with a brief statement. So from my perspective, you know, the panel is here. We have a short amount of time. I am going to have a very brief kind of self-introduction. Just quickly, we do have some serious OGs here. Yatsu may go without introduction, but he's definitely a serious metaverse leader. So, you know, it's great to have you on here. Dirk is with Upland, bringing football into the metaverse, which I think is very exciting. And of course, Ben is an old friend and someone who's been, investing and really reasoning about technology for quite some time. So I think add a great perspective to this. So, you know, our topic today and job is to talk about the future of NFT. You know, I think that what I'd like to touch on is we're going to really start with this transformation of play to earn gaming. And the reason why I'm kind of going to start there is simply because I think it's becoming increasingly clear that this is the pattern of mass adoption. And that we already see 1 million daily active users on Axie Infinity alone, and 18 million monthly active users just on that title. So, you know, I think that the spaceship has landed, and I think it's getting really serious up in here. So, you know, what I'd love to do is just have a quick introduction, starting with Yat and then Dirk and then Ben, and really just maybe you can inject, name and where you're from, and then also kind of the thing you're most excited about with respect to the future. So go ahead, Yat.
Great. Very quickly, my name is Yatsu, chairman and co-founder of Animoca Brands. We've been basically building in the open metaverse and with NFTs probably for about 4 years almost. Starting with CryptoCitties. We're very fortunate to be actually the lead investor in Axie Infinity. This was 3 years ago, which was, of course, at that time, considered very experimental. But we've now done over 100 investments in the space. We also own the sandbox. We're behind Rev Racing, and we continue to build out the space. And maybe the one thing that I'm super excited about is that, gaming is driving mass blockchain adoption. I think Axie Infinity is kind of like that Angry Birds moment of NFT gaming, I would say. But the other thing is interesting to me is that it really starts to clarify this idea of data ownership and what actual data property rights really means. which is very theoretical 3 years ago, but today people are beginning to really appreciate. And I think that's the revolution that's going to bring everyone on board when people say, actually, I do need to own my data. I do need to own my digital data. What does it mean? And hopefully that is the beginning of the true ownership parallel that we see with Web3. And I'll leave it at that.
No, it's exciting. And Dirk, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi everyone. Good evening. Hello from Silicon Valley. I'm actually originally from Germany, but I live here since many years. And I'm a co-founder of Upland. Upland is what we call it now today, NFT metaverse based on the real world, where people play, earn, and connect. And well, the story is like a year ago when people were asking, because we're always targeting, say, okay, we really want to go mass market. That's the way we've built Upland, starting mobile first. But, like a year ago, we were avoiding the word NFT roughly, right? I said, you know what, we cannot use that in marketing language. It's just too technical. Nobody will understand it. But I think, no, this has changed completely. And now we have to use it. Otherwise, we're not getting taken serious. So I'm super excited that the space is really taking off. I mean, we still all who are here, right? We still have to do a lot of things, like user experience has to improve, with the energy consumption topic, lots of things where we have to work on. But, I'm very hopeful, that we are solving this. And, I think we're maybe if you look at the whole day, maybe at, maybe at 1 o'clock in the morning, getting to mass adoption at this point.
Great. Terrific. And Ben, affiliation and the thing you're excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everybody. My name is Ben Metcalf. I'm the founder and general partner of Monochrome Capital. Among other things, we invest in Web3. I also saw an opportunity, a gap in the market around a data opportunity in the NFT space. I'm being a little cryptic at the moment because we decided to found and kick off a startup in this space, which is now funded, but not launched yet. So sorry, can't give the announcement, watch this space, but very interested in the data and infrastructure side of NFTs. I think what interests me is the ability for every netizen to have an official deed of ownership on the blockchain, on many blockchains. Obviously, play to earn, metaverses we're going to talk about here is a great example of that, but just the far-reaching and wide consequences of what that means to everybody, both consumers as well as businesses, is truly staggering. And I think this is an amazing primitive. And super excited to be investing, super excited to be in the space, and excited to be on this panel with everyone. So thank you again.
Great. So what I'd like to do is kind of respond to some of the statements about the excitement, and I think what I'll do is hold forth a little bit and then see, if anyone has reactions, right? Because in a way, I'm a disliker of round robin, because you ask the same question, you often get the same answers. So, I'm much more about hold forth and get reactions, right? So I think what Yat said was very astute about the idea of data rights, right? So to me, that's very, very primary. Interested in, I think Ben framed it as kind of a deed of ownership, right? So I think that's, all of this is super important, because Chris Dixon from A16Z, talks about the ownership effectively as being the central theme of Web3. So, I think that is a big deal. I did forget to introduce myself. I'm a general partner with Gumi Crypto Capital, so GCC. We're a early stage lead investor in the strategic round of OpenSea, and also a seed stage investor in Yield Guild, or YGG. So we're definitely excited about this space, and we think that there's a huge promise here. From my framing, the thing that I like to think about is the identification of the sovereignty of users' non-fungible time. And that I think user data is really actually the conversion of their non-fungible time into non-fungible data assets, right? So in a sense, like, the assertion of sovereignty is the assertion of the ownership of their time, and then the time gets converted into things like data, or in the case of something like Axie, it gets converted into SLP, or it gets converted into fungible assets, fungible or non-fungible assets, right? So I think that's kind of this seismic event that has occurred, is the declaration of the sovereignty of users' time, right? And so users who don't have anything have their time. So I think that's a twist, and I think it's causing this huge inflow. So I think that's kind of my lens around the phase change that we've seen and the reaction. So I guess anyone who's got sort of things to pile on. Yeah, please.
Yeah, just to react to that, totally agree with that. And because I think the other thing that's interesting when you think about scarcity and resource is that actually in the past, it was something that you dug up from the ground like oil, right? But actually this particular resource actually comes from our minds. And it is actually one that is, actually really, truly, truly scarce, because each and every one of us has only a limited time on Earth, if you think of it in that context, right? So whatever we create actually has a finite time as a human. And in this case, every individual is rewarded that way. We talk about how the future has to be all creative and then we have to promote creativity in the school and divergent thinking, but schools don't do that because we're still ultimately trying to sort of fit our kids into essentially mass production, because we think of the world in sort of resources in that manner. But data paradigms is changing this. And if you think about who owns and controls that data, that's the other thing. It's not us, actually, which is ironic. We do own our time in the physical world. We get paid a salary for it, or we build a business from that, or whatever it is. We spend time with our family. But in the virtual world, it's owned by Facebook, by the platforms, and they're actually literally stealing our time for themselves and creating a kind of digital colonialism. And that Web3 primitive is changing all of that. And I think actually can completely is altering the space, and which is why we think this is so exciting.
Yeah, maybe to add on here, right, on this aspect, right? So I think you see this triangle also. It's one is time, one is scarcity, but the third one is really the creativity, what we can now see and which is going to explore. But let's face it, right, in the real world, we have competition these days with automation, robots taking over some, unfortunately, lots of jobs and so on. But people, they're a creative species, and that's exactly where the let's say NFT, also in combination with metaverse, really can really help to create completely new opportunities. We always say NFT/metaverse, there's a new land of opportunities, right, where people can expand. And obviously, since now they truly own those things, is really they can eventually make money and make a living out of that. And that is really the groundbreaking, which goes way beyond gaming, by the way, right? It's expanding the market by something which has never been seen before.
Yeah, and data ownership is basically really where it's actually building your own equity now, right? The equity that comes from it. And I think actually that is the solution that, some people talk about AI automation, as Dirk was saying, basically creating the useless human, as it were, because of the work aspect, because, machines and robots will be doing it much better. But actually with this paradigm, I think we can move from universal basic income to universal basic equity, where the equity is relative to each other. Not everyone has the same output, but it is not one where it's a handout, which is kind of what UBI kind of feels like, but it's really one that comes from you and exclusively from you, and you decide what it is because it's your data, right? So I think the one thing that has been a problem in the past is data isn't treated as a human right. It's treated as a service. It's treated as an add-on on top of things, because we think of the human rights aspect in physical terms. But actually, data being the most valuable resource on Earth probably actually ought to be a human right because it comes from us. And that charter doesn't exist. And therefore, I think Web3 is that interesting solution around that.
Yeah, Ben, any reactions?
Yeah, I mean, with the caveat at the beginning of this, I'm not a huge gamer. I'm super excited that people are interested in this, and I think it's a great ramp on for people to understand this wider space. I think the bit that I come back to with all of this is I completely agree with everyone else on the panel about the opportunities in front of us. What I think is disappointing when I look at previous areas of things like the creator economy on YouTube is you kind of get this pyramid of the small group of people that actually create, the next sort of group of people that sort of leave comments or do some interaction, and then this thick bottom part of people that just consume. We still live in a very consumption-driven economy and a consumption-driven world. This opportunity and everything that people are talking about here is an opportunity for people to not just participate by consuming, but participate by creating, and indeed participate by owning. And I think the challenge is going to be, having been these days an older man who's been around on the internet since the early 90s, is the issue of education, or the issue of learning, and whether or not some of these new tools, these new metaverses, the idea of owning one's time, the idea of owning assets in games, whether these become interesting ramp-ons for people to understand these concepts, and then they can bring them more broadly into the rest of their life and think about where NFTs and other concepts within this paradigm actually applies. That's the bit that I hope for, is that this becomes a learning opportunity, so that little tiny chunk of people that do the creation on the kind of Web2 platforms like YouTube, that in this era, in this paradigm, we get a much thicker chunk of people really owning and really consuming and properly engaging. So that's the challenge that I'm looking to see.
I mean, I think to one of the challenges that you're describing, obviously, is, you know, reflected in kind of foolish behavior, right? So I think crypto has been a site for foolish behavior, you know, and we see people buying like, you know, so-called shit coins, you know, and obviously I think education is a part of that, right? So in a sense, like the world, this metaverse world could be a very destructive world if everyone in it participates in the most foolish and destructive behaviors. So, you know, I think I definitely recognize what you're saying, you know, and I think that is an important principle. Dirk, you may have had something to add.
Yeah, just saying the economics are actually changing. When you think about it, right? When you were on YouTube or Facebook and we were a creator, right? You got paid, you know, a fraction, you know, of the times of people when going back to the time, right? It was just, you know, penny. Then you, of course, you have to get 1 million of viewers or how many, right, in order to make an income on YouTube. But this is changing now. We're adding the creativity part to it, right? And this is where the economics, you know, become really interesting. So you take time and you take creativity. So when I'm now selling, let's say, an NFT, a good, right, which I created with my time, I can maybe sell something for, let's say, $100 to 1,000 people, right? That's actually quite interesting income all of a sudden. I don't need 1 million anymore. And this will democratize, you know, much more the economics what we are going to see. And that's, you know, in quotation marks, I hope that, you know, that the traditional, you know, Web 2.0, right, is going to be disrupted by exactly that new paradigm here.
Yeah, I mean,
also,
I think. Yeah,
go ahead. Just to add on quickly, just on Ben's point, I think one thing about the exclusivity around that, right? First of all, the platforms did control that exclusivity because they're essentially kings of their particular domain. But the other thing was, of course, that because of the whole open source paradigm, the people who were able to participate in that growth actually were the people who knew how to code. So you ended up creating a new elite, which was the ones who knew engineering and who knew code inadvertently, right? That wasn't the goal, right? Now with non-fungible tokens, what's exciting here, your time becomes a parallel, but it's actually much more accessible because you don't need to know how to code. You can be an artist, a photographer, a creator, or whichever it is, right? And it broadens it. And it used to be controlled within the engineering framework for those who knew how to build it. And now, you know, because it's on chain, because the data layer is open, you know, to Dirk's point, everyone can start doing it. I think it'll change, it'll disrupt the space, and it'll be broadening that potential to, you know, like I think of it as a mass creative liquidity event, if you will.
So I'd like to hold forth there on a question that was raised actually by our host, which is this question of what makes an NFT worth $1 million, you know? And so to me, I come from the world of open source software. And in open source software, what I see developers competing for what I call immortality slots, right? And so these slots represent, to me, almost like platonic ideals. So for example, if your contribution represents, like, what is the ideal SQL database, right? So the answer is probably Postgres, right? You could say MySQL if you want, but like, I like Postgres. But my point is that these are slots that are sort of canonical and they're embraced by the world, and the world confers kind of a limited immortality. Now, the idea that this can be reposited as data and given this limited immortality is offered by a system like a GitHub, which is a repository, right? So we've always had this competition in history and culture. So for example, if I said there's an immortality slot for female portrait oil on canvas, a lot of you would say, well, maybe the Mona Lisa is an enduring example of a competitor for this immortality slot of culture. Right. But the thing that's happened with NFT is that these slots of culture and history are now available. Right. So in a sense, it's just the surfacing of a repository that's actually capable of conferring this limited immortality that was already available to developers. So in a sense, I'm kind of responding to what Yat was pointing out about this kind of, now it's available to more people and more creators, you know, and I think that's kind of the crux of my argument. So, you know, I'm happy to get reactions.
Yeah, no, and to add on top of that, I think one of the things is about open source, right? Which is probably the one example where the network effect basically beat out everyone else, right? As opposed to what we're seeing with the platforms, is that the value derivative was one of time as a hire, for instance. Oh, you're a great engineer because you developed that open source code. Let me hire you for $10, right? But actually, if the person who contributed to the code actually received even a sliver of a percentage of the contribution he created, which ended up making companies like, Huawei or Xiaomi or Lenovo or whichever company you want to name in the world. Actually, that might have been a better value of his time, and he would spend it differently creating new things as opposed to working for someone in a particular purpose or mission. Right. So basically what it allows for now is a way to participate in the growing network effect. Right. And as that network effect grows, so does your potential in the space. And that's basically what NFTs represent. CryptoPunks or Bored Apes or Sandbox Land, really what you're doing is you're buying a network effect, right? And you're not actually buying necessarily, the visual itself. I think a lot of people say, well, that's just crazy for you. What are you buying a JPEG for? Right? But what you're actually buying is community. You're buying the network. You're buying association. In the same way that when you buy something physical in the world, you make that determination too. If I decide to buy an Adidas shoe or a Puma shoe, what am I buying? 99% of what I'm buying is virtual in context, right? Is imagination, storytelling, community, network, LeBron James wears it, whatever that is, right? And the person who buys it adds to the narrative. If 1,000 more people buy it, the person who has it benefits from it. So basically, it actually challenges the whole idea of the business model being traditionally sort of zero sum into one that's kind of community sum, if you will, right? And I think that's also breaking people's thinking around it, because they're like, well, you have to compete. But actually, the positive competition ends up being one that grows it together, which is different from a model, right? It kills most of the traditional NBA school of thinking.
Yeah, happy to get feedback. Other comments. I'm happy to respond as well, but it looks like Ben has come off mute.
I don't know. I start off with two concepts. The first one was that, I have an open source background. I founded an open source business. You can replicate that open source project and run it anywhere, but it's pretty limited if you don't know what you're doing. You run it on a platform like the one that I founded, it suddenly becomes valuable. It's the same code. The difference is that the context, the difference was the experience, the difference was, the way it was set up. But what was interesting about open source in addition to time is that the bit, and this is getting really kind of out there, the bit is infinitely replicable, right? And that's an amazing concept that computing and technology and the internet really was able to take, its footing from was that you could create a website and it could be downloaded and accessed anywhere and as many people, and you're infinitely replicating bits. The problem is it creates no scarcity. And the problem is, which is the point we were talking about, is that it makes the concept of value, which in societies we very much think about scarcity. Like if everybody was wearing the very same shoe that some basketball player wears, then no one would really give a shit anymore. So the idea is that I have it and you don't, and there's a scarcity, and that's why the shoes cost whatever, and it's not really the bill of material. It's to create a scarcity. It's to be blunt again, it's not a paradigm that I'm particular. I don't wear a lot of shoes like that, but it's what people are into, and I respect it. But that was really hard to replicate onto the internet for that reason. The great thing about it was that everyone could get an equal access to the same experience. So everyone could have the great high class experience of, I don't know, Facebook or Twitter or whatever best of class applications you want. So that was the concept of the infinitely replicable bit. What NFTs are offering, which I think is really interesting and why suddenly something is worth $1 million, is that somebody can actually claim ownership. They can claim that exclusivity. And I think what's really interesting for me with my own personal agenda and interest in this is they can claim utility, right? I'm not representative of mainstream America. I'm not that interested of whether my profile picture is a CryptoPunk or not. I don't really care either way. But if something is going to give me access, if something is going to provide me with utility, whether it's part of a club that gives me benefits, or it's part of access to some service or something like that, and that's being run on a decentralized system, that's very different than the infinitely replicable bit, which is what we sort of had in the first 20 years of the internet. And that's what I think is really exciting.
Well, and I'd like to respond a little bit to your idea of utility, which is I think of it more like rights. Right, which is what rights are conferred, right? And what is the engine that kind of handles the management of your rights? And to me, like a lot of the rights right now are adjudicated by game engines, right? So the game engine tells you what your rights are. It's like, oh, you swing the sword, you get 10 damage. Like, okay, those are your rights. And game engine takes care of that for you. What I wanted to respond to with what Yat mentioned is he mentioned community, right? So the ancient Greeks had a word kleos, and that was what the character Achilles was seeking. And you could translate that as fame. But what it really is it's a limited immortality. And what it is it's what people say about you when you're not there. And I think what the Greeks understood is that the greatest time period when you're not there is after you're dead, right? So in a sense, like that was what Achilles was seeking. And I think
scarcity.
the idea, absolutely, right? And so in a sense, the community value, so this idea of what makes an NFT worth $1 million is it's kind of a contribution to culture, history, the creation of an immortality slot, right? And this concept of kleos, right? This idea that like there's a network effect around this object and that people are admiring it. So Dirk came off of mute. So.
Miko, yeah, Miko, I like to challenge that a little bit, right? Because earlier we said, hey, there's, we had this little top of the iceberg, right, on YouTube or wherever, right, where a small number of creators right, made all the money. All I hear right now is, oh, this is NFT, this is worth $1 million, $50 million, and so on. I mean, that's the narrative in all the media, right? And I think that's not, I think that's not what is so exciting about it. It's really more about the small amounts, that everyone can get access to it. And then it comes back to the questions, all what NFTs really are. They are systems of beliefs. I join, it can be very tribal. We all know that, right? Currently, especially right in the NFT space and the blockchain space and so on. But once we overcome that and once we democratize it, that everyone can really, inter-exchange it. And once we go away from the narrative that only the top should earn and, hey, this is $1 million worth and so on. So I think then we really achieved something. I think we're quite a little bit further away from that. But otherwise, we just run the same, the same path which we've run always before. So I'm a little concerned about that if we continue with the narrative, to be honest.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I like to get a little combative. So Yat maybe has a reaction.
Yeah, no, great. So first of all, totally agree with everything here. I think one of the things about the community effect on this one is that when you think of NFTs, they don't have to be the manufacturer scarcity only, which is what happens a lot with art and photos. Oh, I'm only issuing 5 or 10. It's actually, you could issue millions of the same object, but then it depends on what people do to it, right? It's like our relationship with wedding rings. Wedding rings as a community really only have a special value to just maybe 10 of us, 20 of us, or a family. And maybe if it's a very famous person, it might have a different kind of immortality, right? I love the concept of kleos and immortality as a concept here. But I think that is sort of, maybe as a community that is small enough, but has that power sort of in and of itself, right? The other thing that's really precious is that you can add communities on top because of composability, right? Meaning that it may have this utility today, right? I mean, it's like Pokemon cards in the physical world. It was meant for a game. Who knew it was going to turn into valuable sort of collectibles, right? And go crazy like this. Or trading cards with, Major League Baseball. They were add-ons for chewing gum, right? Before they actually ended up becoming valuable, tradable collectibles thereafter and used in different cultural ways, right? So I think what's so powerful about NFTs is that, they store all these moments of, immortal culture, if you will. And then in this case with NFTs, you can take them with you and transfer them and move them around and look at loot. Right, the composability on top of that is almost ridiculous, you would say. A bunch of words, what the hell, right? But, it captures the imagination because that's after all what, we have as humans and puts incredible things on top on this paradigm where everyone is building on top of, a bunch of words, right? Which now we can own a piece of that network effect as it grows. And I just get really excited.
No, and I have to apologize, right? Because we are really creeping up to the top of the hour, which is a shame because I think we do have a wealth of knowledge here on this panel. And one of the things I did want to respond to is that when we think about loot and the distribution of loot, one of the things that I can't help thinking about is Yield Guild, the YGG, which is a guild whose sole function is to distribute the proceeds of collective action. And the reason why I wanted to mention them is that they're really evidence of something new that's forming, because people look at this as the first metaverse labor union. And as a labor union, people look at them and say, well, they're just a bunch of socialists, right? But at the same time, they're operating probably one of the world's largest metaverse hedge funds, right? So they're running around buying up in-game items and NFTs and land and everything else. So you look at them again and you're like, wow, they're just a bunch of capitalists, right? But the thing that I think is kind of really interesting is that they're not random, because the things they're buying are the things that the players are using to generate yield, right? So the socialist branch and the capitalist branch are operating together in this new synergy, right? So, I just wanted to kind of like claim that something new is happening here. So like, you know, I think, you know, the old models are being challenged, you know, and I just wanted to just toss it out there. I know that unfortunately we're short on time, so, you know, I'll get quick reactions and then we'll call it a wrap if we can.
Maybe on this one, yeah, look, it's capitalism is changing. I think the old form of capitalism was sort of the basis of the industrial sort of revolution, and that age is all, you know, sort of subject to change. You know, when you think about what the internet did, you could argue that the internet was probably an ultra socialist view of knowledge and information. And it disrupted perhaps that type of information that was knowledge, that was money, right? The sort of the information arbitrage that existed, you know, like decades before in the internet came about. And that's changing. But capitalism was due for a change anyway, right? And I think this idea where you talk about, you know, it's either capitalist or socialist, right? It's a new system. Yield Guild sort of demonstrates that, I think, in a great way, where, you know, you can be sort of social thinking in the way that you do certain things and more inclusive, but yet have a very capitalist viewpoint. The token economy and the token incentives is perhaps as ultra capitalist as it gets, and yet it works from an incentive building standpoint. So I think these are new paradigms. And frankly, in the future, when we go even deeper, look at DAOs, for instance. I actually think DAOs, you know, will have more power or maybe equal power to the way governments are run. In fact, I think DAOs are going to invade governments, are going to invade politics. Right? If you think about what Axie is doing.
Yeah, they're definitely a governance function. I think Dirk came off of mute. I'll let him kind of, maybe Ben can have the final word.
My closing words is actually using words of a famous German philosopher, you know, the three phases, you know, of truth. The first phase is, you know, you come up with something and it's really cool. Everybody laughs at you. The second phase is, you know, it's opposed. Is that no, we never did that here, so why we won't do it. And the third phase is then, you know, it's self-evident. Every said, you know, I told you, so I knew that it was going to happen. That's what we're going to see with the NFTs as well.
Wonderful. And Ben, closing note.
Just really quickly, I think we're in a really interesting experimental phase. We can get some stuff wrong. We can get far out into the edges and come back the way that, you know, this is people calling this socialism or post-capitalism, whatever. I think like everything and what we've seen in the internet before, it'll contract somewhere in the middle. We're kind of here in this kind of sort of middle ground. We explore the edges, and then over time we kind of end up in this kind of middle ground, and that's probably where it'll go. I implore people to explore those edges. We should all be doing that. Where we'll end up, I don't know, but you know, let's have fun exploring.
Wonderful. Well, it looks like we've got another exciting panel coming up, so I'd love to hand back to the Crowdcreate team. So thank you so much to my panelists. Apologies for not having enough time for all of you, but you know, definitely super exciting to talk to you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Miko, Ben, yeah, Dirk. That was incredible, and so many people in the community are like, let him stay longer. But the show must go on, and we'll definitely bring the four of you back for a longer fireside chat. You know,
great moderation by Miko. I actually learned a lot in terms of getting feedback, and rather than just having it posed out to a single person, everybody goes around, just having everybody provide unique insights on different topics. It's good.
Thank you, Miko. All right, so our next panel, shifting over from the future of NFTs, a really forward-thinking group. Now we're going to be talking about what's next in DeFi. So excited to welcome panelists, Austin, Michael. Michael, you're in the coolest room in town.
Thank you. Thank you.
You got to tell us about that too. Austin, Rock, and Chantel.
Hey guys. Is Rock? I believe Rock needs the invite. I just sent you his email again. I think we sent it to the wrong one. So check that real quick.
He's here.
He's here. He just needs to.
Michael sent it. I'm just trying to figure out. Oh, there we go.
All good. Cool.
All right.
What's up? Away. What's up, everybody? Rock, how are you, man? Been a while.
Good to see you, brother. Long time.
Good to see you, man. Nice fish tank. Who else we got here? We got, I can't see my screen. Let me switch to the right mode. There we go. Now I can see everybody. All right. So we got Chantel, Michael, and Rock, and myself. Thanks, Jeff and Ivan, for getting us here today. This is a great summit, so I really appreciate it, and looking forward to kicking off. So I'll do quick intros of everybody here, and then I'll let you actually talk about yourself, because you know it better. You know yourself better. So anyways, Chantel Borelli, founder of CrownBits. Michael Hun, founder or COO of DeFi Summit, and Rock Zacharias of QuickSwap, co-founder, advisor extraordinaire, and a bunch of other stuff. I've known Rock for many years back in the Los Angeles days. So at any rate, Chantel, why don't you give us a quick intro of yourself and your company, and then we'll go around the room, get to know each other.
Hi everyone. Yeah, so I'm the CEO and founder of Crownbits Rewards. So we are a rewards platform that encompasses cryptocurrency, digital assets, yeah, so we do a B2B play. We also do B2C with our platform. My background really quickly, University of Waterloo grad, went to Berkeley, studied blockchain technology there, and got into crypto. And then I made this company, Crownbits Rewards, and we've scaled ever since. So yeah.
Great, thank you. And Michael, what's up, man? How are you?
Hey, good. A little bit about me, as I actually used to work for Rock at Lunar Digital Assets a while back, but decided to, after a little bit, once DeFi started exploding, I actually opened up another company called DeFi Summit, along with my co-founder Justin Wu, and we've been doing events ever since. And for like last DeFi Summit, we had Miko on there as well. But a lot of interesting characters, and glad to be here within the space to kind of talk about decentralized finance and the future of it.
Awesome. Yeah, Miko just had a great panel. Thanks. He's blowing up the comments. Keep it going, Miko. Rock, what's up, dude? Good to see you again. And tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to in the space.
I've been in the space a while, since 2015. I run Lunar Digital Assets, which is a marketing and incubation firm in the space. We work with a lot of different projects like Polygon, QuickSwap, Persistence, etc. I'm also co-founder of QuickSwap, the largest DEX on Polygon, doing a lot of fun stuff there. As you guys know, Polygon's been kind of exploding over the last 6 months or so. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Yeah, I would love to dive in a little more on that at the right time. Say hi to Sandeep and everybody else over there. And the new $100 million fund, right? It's pretty impressive what they got going on in the whole ecosystem.
Yeah,
good time.
You, I think in Miami, right? Are you going to December?
Yep, definitely. Definitely want to talk to Michael more about that. Justin got me pumped about it a few weeks ago, and we just talked again this week. So looking forward to that. I think we'll all be speaking there. So we'll all be there. One big happy family. Finally, an event that's in person too, right? I think a lot of them are going back to the virtual. I mean, this one's virtual, obviously. It's great to do both. It's good to meet people all over the world. So we can dive into some topics. I don't want to be too rigid with the questions and the topics, but I want to make it conversational and fun so we can kind of keep it dynamic. But I think lending is maybe a good place to start, because that's very central and a very easy one to start with when it comes to DeFi is lending, and whether it's leveraging your own assets so you don't have to sell them, or lending to third parties. What do you guys like as far as lending? Like, what's your experience lending, and what are some of your favorite lending platforms when it comes to DeFi? Rock, you go first.
All right. So on the decentralized side, I like Aave. Aave's nice. QuickSwap is pretty good for similar to Uniswap. If you want to do pairs, liquidity pairs, there is impermanent loss with that. But the APYs range anywhere from 8% for stable pairs to thousands of percent for some of these smaller projects that are newer and have less liquidity. You've also got syrup pools on QuickSwap, where you get a portion of all the trading fees of the exchange, plus you get tokens that projects basically give in return for liquidity rewards. So very similar to PancakeSwap. The APY on that right now is like over 100% if you compound, and there's no impermanent loss on that. So that's just single asset staking of Quick. I personally have been using Crypto.com recently, not as decentralized, but it's been pretty cool. I staked 40,000 CRO, so I get $40,000 worth. That gets you 8.5% on Ethereum or Bitcoin, which is pretty cool. It gets you 5% cash back in crypto. You earn crypto on all purchases. And you get stuff like airport lounge and fun stuff like that. I think the CRO that you stake, you get 12.5 or 12%, I think, on that portion. So it's pretty cool for, being centralized. I think, I'm all about decentralization, but it's okay to have some in a centralized area. And I like that it's locked. So if anybody ever tried to hack me or something, they can't even touch it because I can't pull it out for, 3 months at a time or whatever. So
absolutely. Cool. Yeah, there's and you get more benefits for locking up, right? So not only is it safer, but you're staking longer. So there's the upside for that.
Yeah, shout out to Michael, by the way. He was the one that got me on the crypto.com.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, look, crypto.com was going to be here, but they had to bail last minute on this, but some conflicts came up. So you guys are here instead. So I really appreciate it, Rock and Michael, for jumping on and making this a great conversation. But yeah, Rock, you just kind of reminded me, man, the names that we come up with in this industry is pretty awesome. Pancake swap, everything else.
Dragon's Lair. Dragon's
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. I mean, much. I think we're one-upping Google with all their fun names they come up with for their products, right? So and services. So, anyways, Chantel, let's talk a little bit about you and CrownBits. What's the plan for lending, and what are some of your kind of advantages with the incentive programs?
Well, I think CrownBits, we're in a very interesting position. So since we play more a B2B play, so what we would do is actually incentivize lending. So we would incentivize it maybe with liquidation, for instance, right? Liquidation for lending, right? So those certain things we would actually partner with an exchange like QuickSwap, like different exchanges, crypto.com. So that's essentially our position on that. But I think that personally, I would definitely do crypto.com, BlockFi. I've seen some lending options there as well. So
yeah, BlockFi
I think that's a new and upcoming feature for CrownBits. That's where we stand with that.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys
BlockFi in the US?
I don't know where the jurisdiction is, but I know that they raised 350 million this year, and I think it was around a 3 billion valuation. To see that kind of valuation for a company that, a couple of years ago you were like, oh, it's interesting, and then you turn around and you're like, wait a minute, 3 billion? That's pretty quick. So, and it's an equity company, right? Like they're not a token company, so it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, crypto.com is a little blend of both, right? But it's funny to think, 4 or 5 years ago, I would have told anyone don't touch exchanges, right? Because of hacks and things like that. But it's come a long way, and I might get some flack from some of my, more hardcore decentralized friends, but it has come a long way. And I think, it is Michael raising his hand, but it's come a long way, and there is more trust in it, I think. Crypto.com, they're in Hong Kong actually, but you are FDIC insured as a US citizen using crypto.com. So that's pretty interesting.
That is cool.
It helped. I know this is maybe a little silly, but it helped when they did I forget, 150 million or 250 million or whatever it was deal with UFC for 10 years. And they are doing a deal now with Major League Baseball. The umpires are going to start wearing crypto.com. So, when they're doing 10 million or a 10-year, hundreds of $1 million deals, I start to get a little more trust. That's not like the best way to DD a company, but it helps. It's interesting how far we've come. I never would have put anything large in any exchanges a long time ago, but I think it's okay to have, say,
now Mt. Gox. You wouldn't have gone deep into Mt. Gox.
Yeah, how's that going, by the way?
Oh my God! Well, I'm not involved at all with the Mt. Gox recovery anymore. I was trying to assist for a little while through the, with Brock and everything we were doing. But it's such a, it's tough because you got all these creditors, right? And you've got the trustee in Japan, and every creditor thinks that everyone that's getting involved just wants to take the money. So it's a losing battle, sure. Right? Or leave a mess. So. At any rate, I think the one thing that we did do with that whole effort was get people excited about getting liquidity earlier. So Fortress stepped up and other groups stepped up and started buying claims. And ultimately, I think like a lot of what that, you know, could have become is like what bullish is probably going to become now. If you look at bullish, I'm not sure you've heard of that yet, but that's like a big play that Block One's doing. So take a look at that. So at any rate,
really quick, do we only have 15 minutes left? Is this 30 minutes?
Yeah, it's a 30-minute panel, so we want to go around. Michael,
okay.
You didn't get a chance to chime in on the last topic, so just let us know your thoughts on that, and then we'll keep it rolling.
Yeah, I don't like centralized lending at all. I completely, that's just the way I am. But at the same time, also for decentralized lending as well, so there's so many kind of like, I would say, areas to where you can actually lose money. So like for me, I actually use like Aave, but kind of carefully. Of course, they're like one of the most trusted names in the kind of like the industry right now. But in terms of lending, there's potentially more yield that can be found throughout other protocols than to just kind of lend out one single-sided asset. And also for the fact of like, you know, basically not having all your eggs in one basket. So if you're lending on multiple platforms, then you're diversifying your risk, but at the same time, you're incurring more risk as well, because each platform has an individual, I would say, individual risk management process. But yeah, for me, I don't like BlockFi, Crypto.com, kind of like the other ones for my personal lending.
Crypto.com to me, man.
I did. You wanted something that was going to be for you.
What is that? Is that mainly because it's like not your keys, not your crypto mentality, or like
yes,
you're handing over your assets, and if something messes up with them, then the empire crumbles and you can't get it out. And
they're a great company. It's just that I personally, like, for me, it's like not a product that fits me. In terms of like, you know, the decentralized side, like if I'm able to see a smart contract kind of like front run where deposits are going, then potentially I can see where, you know, my fund could potentially go.
I only leverage as much as you're willing to lose, right? I guess that's the mentality, right? So
I still do have a little bit in Crypto.com, not as much as Rock and some of the other ones, but I still do have some of it across multiple portfolios. So like a little bit in Celsius, a little bit of BlockFi, a little bit also on Crypto.com, but not as much as like my decentralized side. Like the other areas is where I place a little bit more into.
I've got a little in Celsius. I mean, mainly because I like Alex Mashinsky, and he, like, you know, he was on the circuit for years and years. And like, how could you not like somebody? He didn't have to do it. He had a big team, but he was always there. He was always in the booth too. That was the most impressive thing. Probably still is. Yeah, we'll see him over in Dubai, I guess. But anyways, so
we should get him over to Miami too for Decentral.
Yes, we should. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, wait, where's Mark Cuban? I thought he was going to be on this panel too. No Cuban tonight?
No Cuban tonight.
He's going to be at Decentral, right?
I'm not sure. I actually just emailed him like an hour ago asking, actually. So we'll see.
We'll get him there. So that's great. All right. So speaking of centralized exchanges and issues that could come of that, you know, Coinbase recently dabbled with the lending, or was foreshadowing that, and they got shut down, right? Because the SEC is like, hold on, you're too big, right? So what I think they were calling it Lend, and they were going to roll that out to allow people to leverage their assets, and they stopped, right? They said, okay, fine, we don't want to get in trouble with the SEC. So it seems like the SEC is kind of making the big dogs examples out of the biggest guys first, right? And I don't know, does that scare anybody here, like with that mentality of like start at the top and work your way down to other companies, or are you hoping that those bigger companies pave the way?
Well, I'm sorry, I hope I can kind of take this question. For Coinbase and kind of being, you know, having it to kind of submit to the SEC, I think that's a good thing for us, because like if Coinbase is not able to do it, then potentially we'll have to go to the decentralization route, right? How do you actually stop a whole network from producing it to where you're not able to counter each one of individual product? I think that, you know, like for DeFi, like we do want to work with regulators. Like we want to have it to where it's like an environment to where all users can share. But at the same time, it's if you're already starting to kind of like hit at the big ones that are trying to, you know, pave the way for the space, you're basically telling everyone else that, hey, look, your product's no longer available, but you're still running on another system. So like, let's say, for example, you look at like Aave, you look at Cream, you look at all these other lending protocols, they don't stand a chance against the SEC. So the only other thing to do is get out of the United States. So if you want to create a product, you get out of the United States and you create the product, and then now you interfere with other nations that potentially might be more advocates for it. So you're just taking innovation away from one area and placing it in another. So For example, if Coinbase just said, hey, look, we're not releasing the Lend product into the US, we could release it to the UK side or another one of their other sides. It's just siphoning innovation. And we think that, like everyone wants to work with regulators and work with everyone to kind of create this ecosystem to where we can still, be able to build together. It's just that I don't think that I think that they're aiming at the top dogs to kind of prove a point without understanding what this point is going to be within the long term.
Yeah, they don't even know where they're going. But I mean, at the end of the day, they're just shooting themselves in the foot. It's like China. When China banned all this stuff, they're shooting themselves in the foot. They had a strong lead in mining, and now they've lost it. And that who knows how big an entity that could have been.
Yeah, and now basically I even heard Saylor say this the other day that Bitcoin is a North American startup now, right? Like it's mostly cool. It's kind of flocked back over here because it started to get away from here early on, and then it was very heavy in China and Asia, and now it's kind of the exit has happened, right? You see a lot of the miners looking over here for cheap electricity or abandoned electricity, or that's why I like Bitcoin is the buyer of last resort. So when it's a really interesting dynamic argument, but we don't need to get into that now about the price of electricity and all that because we're here for DeFi. But I do want to. The more they regulate, the more they just force decentralization, right? Exactly.
The more they tell companies you can't do this, they're either going to go somewhere else or they're going to do it in a decentralized way. I mean, if worse came to worse in the future and they really tried to clamp down and lots of countries tried to clamp down, you would just have anonymous teams. And I don't think that's a good thing necessarily, but that's what'll happen if they try.
I think ultimately it'll happen to some degree anyways. Like as we advance as society and cultures around the world and DAOs get bigger and bigger and more, legally accepted in different areas. I think it's going to get really interesting with, look, big companies don't pay any tax really, right? Like they found a loophole. Like basically big DAOs and like these decentralized organizations are going to become like big corporations, but with individual players could take advantage of the same loopholes. Like you'll probably see, DAOs that have REITs and like property pools all over the world and you don't even know who owns it, right? There's like an anonymity built in. So it's pretty interesting. But back to DeFi, you guys doing any yield farming here? Anybody?
I'm actually yield farming on like 20 protocols right now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're the yield farming expert here. So we'll pick your brain for the crowd. So like, what are some of your favorite yield, farming? Well, actually, backs up a little bit. In DeFi, like people might not know a lot about yield farming. So like, what does it mean to you? And what are some of your favorites?
Yeah, so for yield farming, you're basically providing two assets depending on the protocol that you're utilizing to kind of create a yield based off of inflation, because each protocol will provide inflation in their own tokens to reward for impermanent loss. So the impermanent loss is basically a factor of volatility within the market between two pairing assets. Kind of like some of the things that if you're looking at like wrapped ETH and like USDC. So like I stake that on QuickSwap and I place it into a liquidity pair provision. And from those, you receive an LP token. So you also receive a reward from that, from Quick tokens and things like that. But
you get two things there though, because you said inflation. So just a minor correction. Some of these liquidity farming aren't just inflation, because inflation isn't necessarily sustainable. But what the part that is sustainable, like on Uniswap or on QuickSwap or on PancakeSwap, is the trading fees. So all the money that's traded and routed through your pair, you're earning a percentage of those fees. So you're like a little mini CZ, earning, a portion of all the revenue of the exchange. But yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, so providing liquidity gives you two incentives. One is inflation side to kind of mitigate, some of the impermanent loss, but also how Rock said as well, you also receive trading fees. So the model is basically called AMM, which is automated market maker. If you do market making on regular books like centralized exchanges, you receive maker taker fees. Instead of that, in a decentralized method, you receive the portion of the fees from that. And then from there, you kind of gain rewards from it. So there's APR or APY that's associated with that. And, across multiple yields. So I personally, yield on a lot of different protocols. Some of them are more high risk and some are a little bit more safe. In terms of like my favorite farms, I would say like QuickSwap. I also use Osmosis DEX. Dabbling a little bit into kind of like Radium with Solana as well.
And
from
osmosis
those,
is, by the way.
Osmosis is good. It's good because it's basically building on Cosmos, and I think that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that later on Cosmos will be the interconnecting blockchain between all, I would say like all layer ones, so that it can provide also yield arbitrages as well. So let's say, for example, if there's a higher rate on QuickSwap one day, I want to move my funds onto QuickSwap for that day momentarily. And then let's say another day, another yield farm has a higher opportunity. I would switch my yield over to that one and kind of vice versa, depending on your risk strategy. But over time, I think that the yields would, there's a quote from Miko also as well, especially from like the early, if you go into like a degen farm, like some of the ones I get into, if you don't realize the yield, you are the yield. So remember that as whenever you're entering into farms, that if you if you don't realize the yield, you are the yield, and the yield is basically from your liquidity that you're placing into it. So please be careful with a lot of the farms. But I usually go with a lot of the notable ones in order to like place majority of my assets into. The rest of them, I would just place a little bit into it, just test it out.
You know, a really cool thing that DeFi is doing in general is like liquid staking and liquid. So like similar to like if you locked your money into a CD in real life, and then, but imagine you can use that CD for things now. You could go lend the rights to that CD out to someone and get a yield on that. So Persistence with their new P-Stake product is doing something like that in the whole Cosmos ecosystem, where, you know, you can stake your Atom or whatever, your XPRT, you stake it, you're getting your yield from the protocol, like being a validator basically, or a delegator. And then you also could take that liquid version of that now and go lend that somewhere or put it on a DEX and earn trading fees against it, which is really amazing. I mean, there's really not a lot of analogs like that in real life where you can, you know, lock your money into something to earn a yield and then go get another yield somewhere else. There's not very much of that in the real world. And because it's all just tokenized and smart contracts, it opens up these huge possibilities.
Yeah, that's a really good kind of segue into my closing kind of thought experiment for everybody here. So Chantel, I'm going to throw you under the bus on this next one because we haven't heard from you in a minute. But so it's not too far in the distant future, but imagine 30 years from now, what does DeFi evolve into, right? Because as Rock just hinted at, like we can already do some pretty amazing stuff. So like, imagine what like our grandkids are going to build with DeFi type things. I mean, they won't be probably called DeFi anymore, but so yeah, 30 years from now, what does DeFi look like in the real world or in the digital world?
Yeah, I think that incentivizing user behaviors in different industries, sort of incorporating DeFi into that. So for instance, a lot of like fintech companies, environmental, I've seen a lot of environmental companies interested with incentivizing environmental efforts. So I know we've gotten a lot of interest from that. So I think that that's very interesting if people are getting DeFi or lending incentives for all these different sort of industries that are so important 30 years from now.
Like on your carbon credits, imagine getting a
exactly
yield on
carbon
your
rewards
credits,
right
you know?
There. Yeah, so that's actually something that we're really looking into right now, and we're really excited to be hopefully launching something in the next couple months. Yeah, that's
a good point, because anything that kind of lowers your carbon footprint, there's going to have to be an incentive for that, especially with more people and more pollution coming into this world every day, right? We got to find good ways to, and crack the whip model only works to a certain degree, right? Because people riot, people do their own things, but if you incentivize them, it's a better system, right? Ruling with a love instead of fear, I guess, right? So anyways, Michael, you go next, and we'll close out with Rock, and we've got just a couple minutes left.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a merger of a lot of the decentralized finance protocols with centralized finance protocols, well, companies technically, because you already look at like Aave and Compound already looking for institutional lending that's going to be enabled onto a DeFi platform. So for them, they're going to start, they're going to start to capitulate into the space because the yield is actually going to be more beneficial for them in the long term. Because if you're looking at, let's say, for example, if I'm a bank like JP Morgan and I want to provide a product that's going to be faster and more efficient compared to, the traditional standard that they have right now, if I can get a 10% yield off of my assets that I know that I'm already in a long-term play and provide my users what, like 1% for the savings account, I can still profit 9%. So from there, it's a profit model that's going to be enforcing it into the institutional level, that they're going to be having to kind of utilize this, or else they're going to have, you know, the back end of it. So for like Aave, Compound, like a lot of these lending protocols, they're going to be like the first movers to kind of get into it. And then you're going to start looking at like institutional market making for decentralized finance areas. So arbitraging yields, looking at different, you know, blockchains. They're going to start to look into areas of like QuickSwap, look into areas of like whatever's building on Solana, like Radium, to kind of see where their yields can actually produce value for their assets.
You're going to have to. If your investors are earning 0.1% and inflation is 5%, it's not, nobody's going to accept that. The centralized lenders and banks are going to have to get into this if the yields continue to be so much better.
Yeah, and then for that too, it's like it's an opportunity for a lot of them to actually go into the space, because we're providing the framework for, you know, we want to work with them. It's just that if they're willing to, if the regulators are willing to allow that to happen, then yes, we'll work with them and we'll be able to, you know, provide these options for them. Whether it's going to be through institutional lending pools where it's only limited to KYC customers, to also, you know, have that as available. But I think like later on, we're also going to start to see a lot of also like blockchain arbitrages between multiple layers as well. So like, for example, like Cosmos or Polkadot that's trying to interconnect all these blockchains together into one. They're going to start to create a lot of these funnels and provide an institutional grade, you know, type of product that's going to allow them to do that. So, you know, once again, like DeFi within like 30 years is going to be a completely different area. If you think of like finance like 30 years ago, it's like, what the hell just happened, you know, compared to now. And, you know, all these products do take time, but they're building within each platform and each space. It just takes time for them to be perfected.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, and I think with what happened over the past 2 years with hyper, you know, printing of money, I think it just going to speed everything up, because people are going to start to see the inflation more and start to the exodus is going to be happening in currency as well. So it's going to be interesting. So that's all the time we have. Thank you so much to everybody today for coming out. Crowdcreate, thanks for bringing us together. Thanks to Michael, Rock, and Chantel for joining as panelists today, and really appreciate everybody here. Thanks to all the attendees for watching and chiming in on the chat thread. It's been booming. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
you,
Austin, Michael,
Thank you,
Chantel,
thanks,
Jeffrey,
guys.
and Ivan.
Thank you, Rock. Thank you, Michael.
Take care, guys.
Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Guys.
Thank you, Austin, for moderating. That was awesome.
We'll have to do this again soon. See you guys.
Hopefully very soon. See you soon. All right. Really insightful. And those are some good tips. If you're not actually doing DeFi or yield farming right now, those are some good platforms those panelists suggested. All right, so we're moving on to our final panel for the evening. We're going to wrap it up with the topic, how institutional investors are looking at crypto. So let's welcome our panelists for the evening. I know it's late for some of the people in the Eastern time. Welcome, David.
Hey, how goes?
Good. It's been a packed day, but a lot of really good panels. You just heard one just now, but
yeah, very good.
Learned
this
a
is
lot.
good, and this rounds it out because we have yet to hear the institutional side.
Is this it? This is the last one?
Save the best for last, David.
I never want to be between me, that crowd, and the bar. I can tell you that. This is a bad position.
All right. Well, let's see. Okay. Alex, are you going to be joining? If we can bring Alex to the front. And also Quan Park Bitrix. All right, let's see if they made it. While we're waiting for them to join, David, how are things over at Gemini?
Pretty good. Things are going well. I was sad nobody mentioned us at all in the last conversation. I felt left out. I felt ignored.
We might have to bring that panel back so they mention you.
A tremendous centralized lending program, and nobody even thought about it. It was interesting.
Juan said, Ivan, that he's here, but he can't turn on his camera.
Oh, let me see. Oh, it's because he hasn't been promoted to panelist. Okay. Austin Davis apologizes in advance.
It's all good.
All right, Quan, Henry.
While we bring him in, David, if you can highlight just Gemini in general, introduce people to who you are.
Sure,
what you do.
people should know what Gemini is doing, right? So we are, obviously we're an exchange, but we're also a custodian. So you can buy, sell, you can hold more than 50 tokens. We run the Gemini Earn product, which is a lending platform for our clients. There's more than $3 billion in that product. We are coming out with a Gemini credit card. There's probably, I don't know, 500,000 people on the waiting list or something like that right now. That'll have Bitcoin rewards coming soon. And we do a lot of things. And I run our business development group, so dealing with financial institutions, which I've been doing for a long time, not in crypto space or in the crypto space, but also in TradFi for a very long time. And I'll talk about that.
Well, welcome, Henry and Quan. We're still waiting for Alex to join.
So this is Alex. I'm not sure how my name changed.
Oh, okay.
I noticed that. I was like, oh, Henry joined because I knew he wasn't able to make it. So that was funny.
And I don't know how I got the last name Richardson, but interesting.
Let's get that fixed right now.
Yeah, it's Park PARK. Thanks everybody.
It's pretty close. No, I'm just kidding. Awesome.
Great.
All right. Let's.
So who's the black box?
The black box is our team member here. Moderating team.
Okay, cool.
All right. So Alex, take it away.
Yeah, great. So this is exciting because I think I just on the previous panel about DeFi and they talked about institutions. So this is a great segue for us. So we got Dave Abner here, Global Head of BD at Gemini, Quan Park, not Quan Richardson, Quan Park, Global Chief Strategy Officer at Bittrex Global. So guys, I want to just kick it off and maybe I'll direct the first question to Quan. You know, we've seen a lot of retail getting into crypto. We've seen a lot of the headlines talk about retail getting into crypto, but institutions are actually the ones buying and holding when a lot of people are selling when there's a down market. So first off, who are these institutions that are buying and why do you think they're buying now versus 2, 3, 4 years ago?
Yeah, sure. That's a very good question. I've been in this space for a while. I never like to call myself an expert, but I have been here and seen a lot of bear markets that I've witnessed, almost 8 years in this space. So when I first got in, it was mostly institutions that were trading their own funds. So most of the prop traders kind of got in first, and then we've seen an evolution of asset managers, companies that are managing assets for their customers that are wanting to get into this space, and it's happening. So 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was mostly the prop traders. Now it's different institutions, and I think several things have happened to allow this. Obviously, regulatory, education. People are becoming more familiar with the players in the space. They're becoming familiar with the technology. Now we see a lot of banks, a lot of these funds have blockchain teams in-house, so they're able to actually research this asset class. And with things like Bitcoin, right? I mean, it's simple economics. There's a scarce amount available. I think that has something to do with it. We've seen this thing grow from fractions of a dollar to, I think, what is it today? Like 40,000 plus dollars worth right now. So people, I think, institutions are believing more in the asset class, and it's just something that's not correlated to the traditional assets that you see out there. Regulation, clear rules, especially regarding like custody, like Gemini, Bittrex Global, we're I think both of us are known for security. institutions have to feel comfortable with where they're putting client funds, right? As well as their own. Exchange counterparty risk is a real thing. We've seen from 7-8 years back when exchange operators, like, we didn't even know who these guys were, but now we're getting regulators to learn about this space, draft rules so that these institutions can feel more comfortable participating in the market. And I think that's why you're seeing different institutions in this space today as opposed to 2-3 years ago.
And maybe I'll point this to Dave. So how deep do you think institutions are going down the crypto rabbit hole? Are they just starting at Bitcoin, Ethereum, a couple of the DeFi tokens? I mean, Quan mentioned some of them now have blockchain groups or blockchain teams within, let's say, some banks. But how deep are they going? I mean, are they just going sort of dipping their toe in, or are they going much deeper than that?
I think there's a broad curve, right? And it depends, right? I think, typical bell curve, a small percentage of the institutions that are investing in the crypto space are going further than Bitcoin, Ethereum, right? They're reading all about DeFi, they're going into the space a little bit, they're dipping their toes. I would say number of non-crypto institutions that are going deep is still very small. A lot of learning going on. But it goes back to the question you had just asked, right? It's like, why now? And why not before really is why now is really why are they just getting around to this, right? I think there's two reasons there. It's like, but if we're calling them institutions, that generally means they already have a business that they could put at risk by moving too quickly, right? So the regulators are not making this easy. If we had regulatory clarity, we would be, you would see a lot more institutions being able to come into the space. And I think that we'll probably talk about that later, but that's one of the things we're looking for. And on the other side, right, they're in a bit of a conundrum because, now this is sort of the best performing asset class over 1, 3, 5, and 10 year periods, right? So their clients are starting to say, hey, we're missing out on some of the best pieces of the market because of a lack of regulatory clarity and because you're moving really slowly because, of course, you have to protect the rest of your business, but that's starting to impact us as well. So the institutional market is balancing this, and there's a really wide variety of types of institutions that are coming in. Quan mentioned, prop traders and asset managers. We're seeing, you name it on the asset management side, advisors and hedge funds and institutions like endowments and pensions. We're seeing them all. And then you have the additional players that want to use crypto, like for payments or to satisfy their customers for a variety of different things, right? So it's a wide variety of players that want to get into the market now.
The one thing you mentioned, it just drove to my memory. I mean, I've even anecdotally heard of advisors leaving where their book is, or like whatever private bank or wealth management firm they're in, leaving and going independent because they don't have access to crypto, because they're getting calls every week from clients that I want to get access to crypto markets, and they're not able to. So they decide to go independent so they can get access to those markets and provide crypto because they see it as a huge opportunity.
It's definitely the independent advisors, so RIAs, that are able to make decisions and move more quickly in the space. It's also why you see a pretty big family office presence in the space as well. They can make decisions. When you're on, if you're an advisor on a big platform, like, you name one, right? The Schwab platform or something like that, you're dictated by what they're going to allow you to get. And you're reading a lot of articles. It's so interesting. It's so sad. Sometimes you read these articles and, you'll read like, this platform is allowing their advisors to get access to Bitcoin through such and such a fund with like 8% fees and premiums and discounts or whatever's happening, right? Like, there's some really sad ways they try and provide exposure for their advisors, and there's lots of motivations behind that.
They completely ring fence it, right? Like, you can only put 2% of assets or something. So it's completely ring fence as well when people want to actually buy the crypto. But let's talk about regulation. So Quan, especially with what's going on in the US and recent news in China, do you think, I think Dave mentioned like there's no regulatory clarity. Do you think regulation is going to hamper institutional adoption? I mean, especially with all this sort of confusion that's going on right now.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I can't predict exactly what's going to happen in the future, but you know, it's the same with any new technology, right? There has been you know, it hasn't been clean as far as the industry over the years. There's been a lot of innovation, but there's been a lot of nefarious actors too, and regulators have a job to protect the retail. And without them, I mean, there's not much reason for a lot of the more institutions that are actively trading these assets to get into this space, because you know, we need both participants in the market. So however, like the regulatory stance that you know, the US is taking, and China, I think they're kind of on the very other end of the spectrum when it comes to kind of clamping down on what they've done with the recent guidance. There's guidance in you know, Canada and Korea. Like I'm in Korea right now, and I think over 100 exchanges shut down last week. It's been very interesting. However, like when you dig deep into it, you know, the big players are still here. The guys that are trying to do this the right way, the exchanges, the centralized exchanges that are bringing in the talent to make sure the compliance systems are working correctly, because you know, we need to create a safe marketplace, and without rules, I mean, who's going to follow them? So I think it's a good direction that regulators are taking. Maybe the intent is good, but the rule just might not be the right policy at this moment. But you know, things will change. They'll evolve. More education, more development. Like I was in Europe for 2 months, met a ton of teams, Hedera, Solana, Tezos, all of these teams, Cardano, like they're all developing, their communities are developing their blockchains. And once, you know, there's broader exposure, more education, regulators understand more about the tech, I think you're going to see better regulation. And that's just going to help more of these institutions feel comfortable, in my opinion.
And you know, Dave, you sort of mentioned this, which was, you know, it's the best asset class of the last whatever 5 years, 10 years, 1 year, right? Is there going to be sort of a situation where if the regulation doesn't keep up, people will just go to the jurisdictions that have kept up, right? I mean, if it's not the US, they'll just go offshore. If it's not China, they'll just go somewhere else and basically try to get access to this asset class no matter what.
Look, I think this is an industry made up of really, you know, some brilliant minds and some renegades and some really forward-thinking people about who are really developing the future of finance for the planet. However, we need to be realistic that this is financial services, and financial services is the most heavily regulated industry on the planet for a reason, right? We're dealing with people's money, and you know, that's important, right? So getting the regulations right, the regulators, they'll, you know, people say the US is falling behind, and, you know, the regulators are, you know, like you were just asking, are people just going to move to other jurisdictions? Not really, right? Because if you look at all the big regulated firms in this industry now, even the ones that are not in the US, if you read the news articles, all of them are preparing entities to work within the US guidelines, right? Or they're buying US, you know, entities that give them entry into the platform, because eventually the US regulatory scheme will be the framework that will probably be exported around the world over time as well. It's just sort of, that's history, and that's the way it's probably going to go. I think it's a good thing. I really do. You know, I really believe regulatory clarity will help investors, and you know, that's going to be good for all of us. This is, I think about it like, you know, if you think back to the 60s, right, when, you know, the hippies were going to Woodstock. After Woodstock shut down, all those guys went and became bankers on Wall Street, right? So if you look in 30 years, where is Quan and a bunch of these guys going to be? You know, they're all going to be back to wearing suits and working at, you know, highly regulated crypto firms is what I would imagine.
That's a good prediction.
I got a lot of suits that don't fit me anymore, but to get those ready.
Yeah, dust those off, Quan. That's great. So, I mean, you know, let's just talk about specifically Gemini and Bittrex Global, what you guys do in the institutional space. So, Dave, you know, Gemini serves a broad range of institutional customers. I mean, from providing liquidity to custody solutions. So, who are your institutional clients, and what are they asking from Gemini? I would love to get a sense of what they're asking, what you're providing, and what your sort of future plans are to service sort of the institutional customer space.
Sure, we have big plans in the institutional space. We've gone since I've joined Gemini about a year ago. We've gone from about 5 people in the business development team to about 35 globally right now, all focused on institutions. And we think of them in a variety of buckets, and we try and speak to them. Generally, the reason we think of them in buckets is because we speak to them in the language they speak, right? So when you're speaking to financial advisors, they have a few concerns, and they want to sort of hear it in the language they understand. When you speak to hedge funds or trading firms, they think of things differently. In general, they all want the same things to begin with, right? Everybody wants safe and secure custody. You know, Gemini has an HSM solution with a segregated custody, which has been a big hit for fund issuers, right? We are I would say we're the guts of all of the ETF issuance that has happened in approved countries like Canada. Gemini Fund Solutions is inside powering those products, right? On the advisor side, they're using SMAs. They're finding ways to get access directly for their clients. And we're building the team and the tools to work all the way across the institutional spectrum. Just a quick minor bit of history. This is what I did for the ETF industry over the last 15, 20 years. If you go back 10 years, there was less than $1 trillion in ETFs. Nobody knew what they were. Institutions in particular weren't using them. Fast forward to today, it's an $8 trillion industry led by institutions, right? I think we're on the precipice of the same type of move in this space. And it's a lot of people like me who I know in the industry. They have industry experience. They've been dealing with institutions for 10 or 15, 20 years sometimes, and they know how that market needs, they know the information that market needs to be able to proceed.
Yeah, and geographically, are you guys covering? Are there specific regions that Gemini is covering overall?
We're globally now. We have a team, a core team in the US, of course. We have a team based in Singapore covering APAC, and a team in the UK covering EMEA. So you can get 24/7 coverage. We do OTC trading now. We've built out a desk of traders that pass around the book. We've got client coverage on sales coverage for clients all around the world as well.
Oh, amazing. I want to actually come back to your point about the ETF industry. That's actually really interesting. But Quan, same question to you. I know Bittrex Global has no US customers, so I'm curious, you guys are dealing with actually all non-US customers and more part of the global side of the business. So how are you guys servicing institutional clients? What are you guys seeing in the market? Especially would love to get sort of the global take as well from your guys' side.
Yeah, definitely. And right now, Bittrex is split up into 2 separate exchanges. So we still operate the US exchange, which I used to work for. I don't work for anymore. And now I'm with Bittrex Global. So we have a license in Bermuda, Class F license under the Digital Asset Business Act, and also in Liechtenstein, where the head utility token exchange, I would call it, is located with a license under the TVTG, or you call it the Blockchain Act. And here, we have 2 chief compliance officers for both entities, and then I believe the U.S. company has a chief compliance officer. So lots of chief compliance officers, and compliance is definitely, I think, what every good exchange is doing, probably Gemini and all the other players as well. I'll just echo David's point, right? We're getting the talent, we're hiring, former traders. We've seen a lot of interest from employees at some of these Swiss banks, being close to Crypto Valley. They want to leave, they want to get into the space, and they have the institutional knowledge. They know what the traders want. They can speak the language. That's very important. And then we have guys that worked in the wealth management side as well that want to get into the crypto space. And it's a lot of learning on both sides. So the exchange has to provide the tools, whether it's a regulatory license or cold wallet insurance that we have with the tech company, or instant settlement, movement between, clean venues, compliance solutions. There's tons of rules coming in, MiCA, all these things. And it's good to have the talent to give us the feedback, talk to the customers, and tell us what we need to build or obtain. And, I think, just echoing all of David's points, like he's absolutely right. I think this is kind of, speaking the language and giving these institutions what they need is key.
And I think, Kwan, you touched on something which even Dave touched on, which is the idea that you're actually hiring people that are in the traditional finance space to deal with the institutions in institutional business. I think, Dave, you come from Wisdom Tree, if I'm not mistaken, right? So you also have this traditional finance background. How much of, and I've seen this a lot, just even personally with friends leaving, ex-bankers leaving and wanting to join crypto, and I get a message, maybe a week from somebody of how can I get into crypto? How much are we seeing of people trying to leave traditional finance, get into crypto? And what does that mean for crypto? Does that mean crypto is just sort of going to level up from an institutional perspective, and people are just going to basically, who are formerly on the other side, are going to be working with traditional firms as their clients?
It's funny, right? I think this always happens. When I used to be a market maker at Bear Stearns, way before Bear Stearns went out of business, when it existed. I built some trading desks there, and I was a market maker, and I started trading ETFs. I built their ETF desk, and I was an ETF market maker for a while. And then I switched to the issuance side, and I moved over to Wisdom Tree. And all of a sudden my phone was ringing with equity traders and equity sales traders who were like, wow, ETFs are a booming industry. What can you tell me about it? Who can we talk to? And a lot of people made the move, right? And that industry has grown to be thousands of people. I think we're seeing the same thing here, right? Traders are smart, and salespeople are, people in finance are smart, and they see the opportunity here for growth, for career development. We're on the cutting edge in this space, right? You're not going to be like sitting on a bank desk continually watching the people on your sides get cut next to you. You don't want to be the last man sitting there, really, right? You want to be at the front edge of the sword. So I think that's what's going on. And I think it's going to be good for the industry. Every time we bring in somebody from that industry, or from the finance industry, or from the advisory space, they bring that knowledge with them, right? Like, how do we build prime services that rival traditional firms? How do we build, services for RIAs? And then what's going to happen is there's going to be this big, because, my thesis is that traditional financial products all move to digital rails over time. And we're going to need a lot of people to be able to do that. And people that understand both crypto and TradFi and can help that evolution are going to be critical at all levels of the organization.
That's so interesting, because I think a lot of people like to show this sort of reckoning that's going to happen if crypto is ever going to take traditional banks, but really what's going to happen, these people are just going to sort of blend together, right? And it's going to be, they have some expertise and experience, right? They're going to bring it to crypto and maybe sort of level it up.
But we're also going to teach, sorry to interrupt, but I mean, look, we're teaching them things right now. If you think about Gemini, right? 24/7 hour, 24/7 exchange, never shuts down. We do our upgrades on the fly. Traditional exchanges, they close down for the weekend, do their upgrades, right? They are going to have to learn the way we do business in today's world. And that's what will also be, it's not just bringing what they do forward. There's going to be a mix there,
Yeah, 100%. For the final question, Quan, I want to ask you quickly. So
Sure.
what do you see the evolution of institutions entering crypto beyond just buying Bitcoin? I mean, are we going to see security token offerings from institutions? Is this going to be a new field that are out there? I know Bittrex Global launched tokenized stocks, for example, and you know, are you seeing some, you know, additional services that will come out of institutional customers in the future?
Yeah, I think so. I think primarily when I was in Switzerland and Germany, a lot of these companies like wanted to start tokenizing, you know, some of these illiquid assets and create financial product securitization, financial products off of them. I think we're talking, you know, the kind of the 1% where they have a lot of assets sitting in storage and they want to utilize and make those things liquid. Now, there hasn't been a real solution to kind of figure that out. So we see a lot of players, especially in Switzerland, that that kind of have the licensing or the bank to be able to securitize or tokenize some of these assets, but they also need to get their customer base comfortable with tokens, right? The concept of the token, and then we at Bittrex Global, we have a different issue. Like we are very careful into where we sell these things into, and it's like, how do we fit our business into the current rules that are in Europe? So, but on the flip side, we have a ton of customers, right, that hold crypto on the exchange, hold Bitcoin, and kind of are ahead of the learning curve when it comes to being comfortable with trading these assets. So I think we're almost there. It's tons of interest. Like I met a company in Germany that said, "Oh, we want to finance a fleet of BMWs, but now we can do it with tokens like individually, right? We can finance one BMW with a token." Like some of these things that they're thinking about, carbon emissions tokens, like, and rewards, like there's so many ideas, right? But everything's about, I think, timing and getting the right rules in place, and then getting the participants, because you can have a venue with all the licenses you want, but if you don't have customers that are comfortable with crypto or digital assets, then it's not really going to work. So I think we'll get there. Maybe MiCA and some of these other rules in Europe are going to help with the adoption. But definitely, like there's tons of interest. I think it's going to be pretty exciting to see how this space evolves on the security token side.
That's awesome. Dave, anything you want to add before we wrap up on that security tokens?
Look, I think it's we're barely scratching the surface with our creativity and what's going to come. I think it's going to be an exciting next decade. So
yeah, 100%.
I'll just add this, like, you know, Bittrex Global is fairly small for an exchange. Like what we want to create is a venue that creates a safe environment for people to trade these assets and hold these assets. So there's tons of ideas, tons of innovation, and our job is to kind of create the platform for these things to be you know, listed and issued or traded on. So I think you need both of that, right? And we'll just keep hearing these ideas and kind of try to create the environment to make this happen.
Awesome. Well, guys, I think we're at time, but Quan, thanks so much for joining us, and Dave, thank you so much. Super interesting. I think, you know, a lot of people here learned a lot about how institutions are getting into crypto. Definitely a space to watch, and I'm super excited. So thanks so much, guys, and thank you to the Crowdcreate guys for inviting us on this panel.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you,
Alex.
David. Thank you,
David.
Quan.
Thanks, Quan. Thanks, Alex.
Yes.
Very insightful. And that's a great way to round out the conference. You know, we've covered a lot of topics throughout the evening, but yeah, that was a great wrap up here.
We touched everything: institutional investing, NFTs, metaverse, regulatory, legal, tax. What a day. We just published the session 1 recording. It will be emailed out to everybody maybe this evening or tomorrow morning. And we're also going to be publishing session 2 as well.
So stay tuned, watch your emails. We'll be publishing them. A lot of gems to rewatch. I'm probably going to be rewatching them very soon, but yeah, a lot of nuggets that were dropped. And James, yeah, yes. And anybody who's attending will be airdropped community CMTY token. So we'll keep you in mind. We'll be taking a snapshot of everybody who has joined to be eligible.
And we encourage all of you to participate and actually help us build our next conference. It's going to be launched and announced later via email, and it's going to be called DevCom. And we're going to be bringing together the builders for a lot of these web products, finance, NFTs that you use and interact with today. So again, wanted to thank everybody. Please share as much as you can, wealth of knowledge, insights that was shared. And we will be sending out recordings. The community token, CMTY, is going to be dropped soon. Go to our website if you want to share that. Join cmty.com. Again, the idea is that all of you can participate in the value creation of our community, of these events, of the expert network that we're building. All of the feedback is highly valued. And again, wanted to say a big thanks to our event organizers, to all the panelists, the speakers. I encourage all of you to connect on Twitter, and we'll see you at the next event.